In 2024, I introduce you to Shelve It or Scrap It, a monthly reading challenge where I read randomly selected books from these stacks on the floor of my library. The goal was to get all of the books from the floor onto my shelves or scrapped into my Unhaul pile by the end of the year. We started 2024 with 70 books in the stacks, but despite shelving 35 books and scrapping 57 books throughout the year, holding 64 less books than in 2023 and thus making a positive dent in my own TBR as a whole, we actually ended the year with one more book in the stacks than when we started. So in 2025, I have to up my game. The rules remain the same, but I now have to read the same amount of books per episode as I've hauled in the previous month, so that by the end of this year, I will hopefully reach my ultimate goal of getting all of the stacks off the floor and into a proper home, either on my shelves or on somebody else's. In episode 20, we shelved 3 books and we scrapped 6. So we are going to be starting episode 21 with 38 books in stacks. Hello my guys, welcome to episode 21 of Shelve It or Scrap It, the vlog series where I try and get these stacks off the floor of my library and onto my various bookshelves through any means possible, but typically through a process of reading them and deciding whether I would like to put them on my shelves or whether I would like to unhaul them. So if this is your first episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, then I will of course put the playlist down in my description box so you can catch up at your leisure. But if you know what's going on, if you're here to find out what's happening in episode 21, I'm actually really excited about this one. So let's give you a recap of what's been going on since I last saw you. I think it's only been like a couple of weeks since I finished filming episode 20, but I have added half of my October haul. October, I had a bunch of pre-orders come in that I hadn't forgotten about them. I just really didn't expect them all to come in at once. I had some publisher mail. I bought a couple of books. It is my biggest haul month of the year. And this is not even the episode where we're going to balance the amount of books we read to the amount of books that I hauled in October, because we're still balancing August. Like, we are behind and I am very aware of it. But I added, I think, around 9 books. I managed to shelve a couple of things. You remember in the last episode, I had a bunch of gaps on my paperback shelves because none of the books I could find in the stacks were working in a way that I could get them in all of the gaps that I had on the paperback shelves. So what I actually did, you may have heard me speak about it before, I have a book cart in the corner where books go to die. It's full of books like thrillers, literary fiction, things that I want to read, but I don't think I would keep after I finish them, and I've just forgotten they exist. So I actually filtered a bunch of those onto my paperback shelves, meaning that hopefully when we go to the paperback shelves, I've got fluff stuck to my lip gloss. Hopefully meaning that when we go to the shelves, like if we decided to shelve anything or if we're reading books from the shelves, then we would be able to get through those books in that way. And then hopefully I can clear that cart because I don't want to have books on it anymore. I want to have that for like my filming equipment and also maybe some craft stuff. So I have actually accomplished something and shelved some stuff, but nothing from the stacks. So we're starting with, I think, 38. This is the third time I've counted. Yes, 38 books in the stacks, and I think we ended the last episode on maybe like 29. So I am coming to accept that we're maybe just not gonna get through this year. But it's fine because I'm having a great time, and I think even though the stacks seem to just like keep staying about the same, I am enjoying the fact that this challenge is causing me to read a little bit more randomly, for me to prioritize things that I wouldn't necessarily organically reach for and read some of the older stuff on my shelf. So we're going to keep going. Don't worry about it. And this might just be a reality that we have to accept. I do still think that it's a lot better than when we started. But regardless, episode 21, it's the end of the year, guys. This is very probably the last episode of Shelve It or Scrap It you are going to see this year. I think I will start filming another one before the year ends, but this is probably the last one that we're going to get posted. And so we're going to have a bit of fun with it. We're going to be continuing on with the Clearursht Readathon, which I have been participating in through November and December. I will link the announcement video down below once again if you'd like to check it out. It's created by Andy from Mouse Reads, and it is essentially a readathon designed to clear your shit before the end of the year. The only rule is that you can't buy books to fulfill the prompts. You have to read from your own TBR. That's the point of the readathon, to clear your own TBR, which, I mean, I'd be here for a lot longer than 2 months if I cleared my TBR completely, but this is a perfect readathon to combine with Shelve It or Scrap It, where we are exclusively talking about our backlist. And in case you have not noticed, I have added some interesting books. When I say I added half of my October haul, I did shelve some of my haul, and I got some sequels out. I got some anticipated books out. So we've got some good stuff behind us today. And I have, like I said, I've been participating in this readathon for a couple of months. So I think I've read 8 books. And I fulfilled 8 prompts. I have a couple of gaps because you're supposed to complete them in an order, and there's a couple that I've skipped over. But for the most part, I have been following along in order. So for this episode, we are, like I said, rectifying what I hauled in August, or part of what I hauled in August. This is the final installment in the little 3-part run that we had to balance the books that I hauled in July and August. So we're going to be reading 7 books in total. Honestly, at this point, can't remember what I hauled in August because it's now November. I nearly said October. That's completely wrong. But it was a lot. I think across both months, I think I maybe hauled like 11 books. In August, it was rough. I went to quite a few publishing events in the summer is the issue. And the continuing issue that we're having now, the reason why October was so substantial is because I keep going to those events. I keep hauling more books, but it's fine. So for the prompts, the first one that we're going to tackle is one that I've skipped over, and it is a mini boss battle because Clearursht is a story-based readathon, and you get all of the prompts ahead of time aside from the boss battles, and they are decided by your strengths and your weaknesses. So the first mini boss is decided by your weaknesses, and tell me that this is not more perfect because you can choose your weaknesses ahead of time and then the prompt is revealed to you at a later date. So I had to choose the weakness maximalist, which is somebody who has more books than bookshelves. How could I not? The irony, if it even is irony, is that a lot of the weaknesses fit for me, and I could not confidently with all my chest say that I had any of the strengths. But for the weaknesses, I had to go with the maximalist one because I do definitely have more books than bookshelves. And when the prompt was revealed for that one, it was, of course, read a book that doesn't fit on your shelves. So I have free reign to pick anything from the stacks behind me. And, you know, I don't know what I want to go for. I kind of want to go for something easy because we are in like the end of year stretch as well. I kind of want to treat myself during this episode, and I want to read some of those sequels, read some of those anticipated releases, but having like a complete free pick is making me want to go a little bit rogue. I have like these things like All the Devils that were on my autumn TBR, and now it's November, so it's still autumn, but I feel like that time has passed. I feel like I'm over that now, which means that I kind of want to go for Winter House by Ben Gutterson, but then we also have The Coward by Stephen Arya, and I think that that's pretty snowy. I've heard really good things about Immortal Consequences. A lot of people seem to be really enjoying that. I want to read Catabasis and Shield of Sparrows, which I just put on my December TBR. In the interest of keeping it seasonal, like I did last episode with Spells for Forgetting, I am going to choose a book where if I don't read it now, then I'm pretty much going to be waiting a full year for it to roll back around to the correct season to read this book. And this is the closest thing that I have right now to a Christmassy read, because I read all of my Christmas romances last year, and honestly, I'm actually not that much of a Christmas romance person. I don't enjoy them very much. But what I do have is a cute winter middle grade, which is Winter House by Ben Gutterson. I'm pretty sure I picked this up on Jade's recommendation from JD Rave Reads many years ago. Was this gifted actually? This was a gift from Larissa, so thank you very much, Larissa. This was shortly after I read Nevermore, which is one of my favorite series of all time. It is a children's series, but I think it's great for people of any age, and it has a lot to enjoy about it. And I loved the cover on this. I love the illustration on children's books because I love illustrated covers, and I just thought that this was beautiful. It does have some illustrations in it as well, and I feel like I'm coming off the back of an epic fantasy. I just read An Echo of Things to Come by James Islington, and I do want to be getting into some of these sequels. I'm in the mood for romantasy right now, but I think I want something a little light to kind of break that up. I honestly have no idea what this is about at this stage though, because it's been so long, and I don't know if this is a series, and if it is and I love it, can I get matching ones? These are all questions I'm gonna have to answer later. Oh, it's about a hotel. Oh, I'm so excited to read this. I'm so in the mood. So this is about an orphan who is shipped off to Winter House Hotel by her aunt and her uncle, and when she's there she discovers a magical book of puzzles that will unlock a mystery involving Norbridge and his sinister family, and as she starts to unravel this mystery, she finds that she is maybe more connected to this family and this house, I think it's the house actually, the hotel, than she originally anticipated. I did not know that I wanted to read this until I sat down here and like looked at the stacks, but I'm so eager for this right now. So I'm doing some sprints with my patrons and I'm reading Winter Song. I've made it to the end of part 1. I'm 140 pages into this now, and I'm having a really good time with it, and I don't read a ton of middle grade books. I don't think I read any last year. This is the only one I've read so far this year, but there are some that I really, really enjoy. I like the first book in the Amari and the Night Brothers series. I enjoyed Frost Hearts. I love the Nevermore series. So while I've been reading this, I've been thinking about what it is about middle grade stories that can make them enjoyable for adults. And that made me think of things like cozy fantasy. And The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune is not cozy fantasy exactly. The topics discussed, I think, are a little bit higher stakes to make it officially cozy. But I remember when that was released and everybody was talking about how heartwarming it was, and it was very often described as a middle grade for adults. So it's an adult book that reads like a middle grade. And I was thinking about how I can enjoy something like this, but if we're talking about cozy fantasy in general, which has become a lot more popular recently, I don't really like it. I find it kind of boring and lackluster. And the thing that I'm enjoying about Winter House specifically, and that I remember also enjoying about like the Nevermore series and also Amari, is that I think that a lot of middle grade stories introduce you to this really cool place. So like in Nevermore, it's Nevermore the town and the Wondrous Society and the academy there. In Amari and the Night Brothers, it's the academy that she goes to. And in this, it is Winter House, which is a hotel. And then when you're introduced to that place, you then get to explore it. And that is something that you don't always see in adult fantasy, especially because I feel like a lot of books that are being published more recently are a lot faster paced than fantasy used to be even a few years ago. I can think of a few books that do follow that format, like Nevernight by J. Kristoff. Mia goes to the assassin school and we get to explore the assassin school. And I think that that is what I enjoy about the middle grade, that I do enjoy, that you just get to sit in this cool concept and there are things going on in the background. It's not like it's lacking plot. There's definitely things happening, but the main character is very new to this situation, and so she's just having a grand old time exploring everything that this hotel has to offer. But anyway, this is following an orphan called Elizabeth who lives with her aunt and uncle. They're not actually her aunt and uncle, they're like distant relatives of one of her parents. And when her parents died, I think she was maybe 4 years old, she went to live with them. They died in like this horrible firework accident supposedly, and her aunt and uncle are very poor, and not in a way like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie's parents are poor, but everyone loves each other. It's not that kind of poor. It's like poor and stingy and kind of mean. So they are offered a bunch of money to go on holiday. So they tell Elizabeth they're going on holiday and she's going to have to go stay at this hotel while they're away. She thinks this is really weird because she gets to the hotel and it's actually nice, and why would her aunt actually pay real money for her to stay in a place that's actually like quite enjoyable to be? And as she's exploring, they have a massive library and she's obsessed with books and words. And as she's exploring, she starts to uncover the mysteries of Winter House. Now, this is obviously targeted at much younger readers than I, and so I feel like I am picking up what Ben Gutterson is putting down in terms of the foreshadowing and the plot in here. I feel like I know why Elizabeth has been sent to this house and what her relevance is to this house, but she finds a book in the library that appears to be quite valuable. It contains a cipher, and there's lots of like portraits and stuff around the hotels, one of which has a note like painted into it that is written in code. So I feel like we're going to be uncovering the cipher. And you know what the really cool thing about this book is? We have the note written out for us, and now we also have the cipher. All we need is a keyword, and then I can figure out what the note says. I don't need it told to me. Like, I can do that myself, and I'm so excited for when we figure out that keyword, because I am gonna be writing this down and figuring out what's going on. It's actually funny because the last book that I read was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. Obviously very different story, adult romance, but the two characters, you know when you get to the end of a book and you realize why it's called what it's called? I had that moment when I was reading Love and Other Words, because it's about these two characters. It's a second chance romance. They were together when they were teenagers and something happened and they haven't spoken for 11 years and then they randomly meet again. But they're obsessed with reading and they're also obsessed with words, and it's really funny because one of the people that Elizabeth meets in this hotel is a boy of the same age as her who's also obsessed with words, and they do like word ladders together and anagrams. It's funny because I've just read a romance where like one of the things that they say to each other, like every time the two characters meet, they ask each other what their favorite word has been in the time like since they last saw each other. So it's almost like an origin story of those two characters, even though their origin story is in that book. I feel like these could be the same people, but as children is what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm having a good time with it. It is going pretty quick. It reads pretty quick because it is a children's story. And we also have some really pretty illustrations in here as well. As I suspected, granted, this is a wintry read. I mean, makes sense, right? It's called Winter House, but it also takes place over Christmas because the time period that Elizabeth has been sent away for is for her like school Christmas break, and she's going to be at this hotel over Christmas and New Year. But I'm really enjoying the atmosphere of the hotel, so I'm excited to see what it has in store for our characters and also what the solution to the mystery is going to be, because I feel like I know Elizabeth's relation to this hotel, but I don't know, like, I think I know who the antagonists are, but I don't really know what they want or how any of that is going to unfold at this point. I'm just popping in to let you guys know that I am almost done with Winter House now. I'm on page 265, so I think I have around 100 pages to go. I actually don't really have anything to report since the last time I checked in with you. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still enjoying the exploration of the hotel, which has continued. The plot is thickening and the mystery is still building, which I'm really enjoying. And like I said, I do think that there is a main plot twist of this book that I figured out ages ago, but there's actually still some stuff at this point in the book that I'm unsure about, and I'm pretty eager to see that unfold. This book has also sent me on a little bit of a scavenger hunt today, which is ironic because there is a scavenger hunt within the book, which was also really fun. But there is a dessert in this book, a candy that is manufactured by this hotel, and I can't remember what it's called. It's something like Flurken. And when the main character arrived, she was taken to the kitchen and they were like, do you want some of this candy that we make? And the way that they described it sounded to the character like Turkish delight. I'm pretty sure that they said it was actually originally from Turkey, and they said that it had walnuts and apricots in it, but the way that it was physically described was like little white cubes on plates, and that reminded me a lot of nougat. And since that, I have not been able to get nougat out of my head, so I went on a hunt around town today looking for nougat and I couldn't find anything. So eventually I went to Lidl and I picked myself up not one, not two, but 3 different types of nougat, because they have the bars at Lidl and they're fine, okay, but I actually don't like things that are made out of sugar. So like marshmallow, meringue, caramel, not things that I enjoy. So you may be wondering why I like nougat, because it is incredibly sweet, even though I think the main ingredient is like egg white and maybe honey in like traditional nougat. And it's something that I like to eat in very small quantities. So the full bars that you can get, I'm not going to eat a whole one of those. It's going to end up wasted. But I wanted the traditional almond flavor. So I picked up one of the bars and then I found that they had these little individually wrapped like nougat slivers that were pistachio flavor. And that is more like the portion size of nougat that I wanted. So I also got those. But because they were pistachio and I wanted the almond flavor, I still got the bar. And I was like, if the pistachio ones do not satisfy this urge, then I do have the bar as well. The pistachio ones did not satisfy the urge because they didn't have the almond flavor. And then we went to Tesco as well to pick up something we couldn't get from Lidl, and I found the traditional like nougat pink and white, so I got that as well. But it's fine because my dad absolutely loves nougat, so anything that I do not eat I will take to him the next time I see him. But I have just had, and it's not even something that I eat a lot of or eat regularly, but since I read the description, I think I was close to finding it. I just couldn't get it out of my head, and it's so funny because it isn't even described as similar to nougat, but that's just what it was like in my head. It's called Flurken and it's Winter House's world famous confection. He says it has walnuts, apricots, powdered sugar and a bit more, and it was originally a sort of candy from Turkey, which is when she said like Turkish delight. So yeah, it's definitely more like Turkish delight, which is obviously it's like a wintry dessert. It's a popular Christmas candy to give to people, and it's also like what the Ice Queen has in Narnia. But to me it was nougat, and that kicked off a craving that I just had to satisfy. Good morning. It is coffee time, which means it's also low-key crisis time because I don't have anything to read as I finished Winter House in bed last night. I had an amazing time with this. I thought that it was really cute and it was really fun, and it had everything that I really loved about middle grade stories in it. This is a mystery over a fantasy, I would say. There is definitely a fantastical element in here, but predominantly the story does follow the mystery of what is going on at Winter House. Like, why does our main character character find this book? Why are other people looking for the book? What does the book mean? We're trying to solve the cipher. I will say that when it came to solving the cipher and we figured out like what the keyword was, the translation of the text was like directly below, but I did like that this book gave you the opportunity to go back if you wished and figure out the cipher for yourself when you had the keyword. That was a cute little fun interactive experience, and I found myself as I was reading this, every time I thought that I could maybe figure out what the keyword is, I went back to try and work it out to see if I was correct. I never was, and I think that Ben Gutterson did a really good job of holding the suspense and like kind of not giving too much away, giving you pieces of the clue that made you think that you were getting somewhere, but not in a way that ever allowed you to solve the cipher ahead of time unless you kind of got the plot twist and figured out the keyword that way. So like I said, I do tend to really enjoy middle grade. I've got a scratch on the cover of this book and I don't know how, because I'm pretty sure I didn't until very recently. I mean, it's not horrific, but I didn't before and I did now. But honestly, this room is in shambles right now, so it could have been yesterday when I was sorting out and organizing. I wanted to put some Christmas decorations up in here, which of course involves doing the clean. There's two Christmas cleans. There's the pre-decoration clean and then there's the pre-Christmas day clean. So I wanted to do the pre-decoration clean, and you're going to see in a minute when I get to shelving this book, I wanted the library sorting out before we got to this part. But I do live in an old Victorian house and we've had some issues with damp in the past that we have had fixed, like very kind of minor issues in the grand scheme of things, just like with exterior walls and like the way that they've been restored in the past, like the exterior of the house, the pointing and stuff was not done to a standard that is in line with older houses. So the materials that have been used haven't been adequate, causing a lack of ventilation. So I will admit the lack of ventilation that has been caused here was my fault. I had all of my Bookopoly boards like pressed against the wall in the corner, and when I was taking everything out for cleaning yesterday, I've discovered that with the weather being like cold and wet recently and having that lack of ventilation, has caused a little bit of a damp spot on the wall, like a fresh damp spot. It hasn't been there for very long, so I'm running the dehumidifier to dry that out, but it does mean that everything that was in that corner and tucked away is right out in the middle of the room, and that bookshelf is where we need to go because I am going to be shelving Winter House, and it is also where the stacks live as well. So it is a bit of a hot mess, but I can't continue my day until I have something to read. So I did give this one 4 stars. It was a very high 4-star. Not like my favorite middle grade series I've ever read, because that will always belong to Nevermore. The reason why I want to shelve this is because I do feel like this is, I always do this. I'm like, oh, I might read this to future children. Right now in this second, I have no concrete plans to have children. I may never have children, but still, if I did, they might like this book. I also do think as well, in terms of keeping it as a copy that potential future children that don't exist might enjoy, it is a really nice one and it has nice illustrations. So we're going to get that on the shelves because I'm pretty sure that I have other middle grade down there that I haven't loved as much that I could take off to get Winter House on the shelves, but we'll see what we've got. So I do actually have 2 middle grade shelves. This one up here is kind of an extension of my classic shelves because I started with just my classics children's books here, which is of course Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz and Mary Poppins, and then I started getting a manga collection, so this is now shared with manga, and then I didn't have space on my other middle grade shelf for these, but I think we can rectify that today. So if I take you down to my other middle grade shelf, which you may have seen during Shelve It or Scrap It because it's down here, obviously these stacks are a little bit in front of it. We also have the trusty dehumidifier here doing the Lord's work down in this corner. It's truly not that bad. Would definitely recommend this. This is the Miyako Dry Arete 2. We've had it for a year now, actually, after we had the other problems with damp, because I realized that there is an ideal humidity to store books in, and my house being in England was not at that humidity. So we have this and it keeps the downstairs at like a good humidity for things like books, records and life. So yeah, if you also live in the UK and you have humidity issues, would recommend that. But anyway, my other middle grade shelf is down here, and obviously the stacks are half in front of it. So behind here, oh, we have my horrible histories books that my mum was collecting and have ended up, which is funny because I read them when I was a kid. My mum took an interest in them and started collecting them, and now I have them on my shelves again. But the more modern middle grade that we have the first two Amari books, Frost Heart series by Jamie Littler, Malamander and Gargantus by Thomas Taylor, and of course Nevermore. I got this off eBay because it was the nice naked hardcover edition, but I actually think I want to try and get myself an actual, you know, proper jacketed edition of this now. I think I'm torn between unhauling my Frost Heart collection or these, because I read Malamander and I really enjoyed it, but then I've had Gargantus forever and I haven't continued. I still could though, technically. And Frost Heart, I liked Frost Heart. Once again, it's like these are really nice editions as well. They have really nice illustrations. I think in terms of the middle grade that I like to read, they skew slightly younger. Like I'd put this at something that I don't know, because kids always read older, but like 7 to 10 years old. Whereas I would say my ideal age range for middle grade is like 10 to 13. Which is what like these are. That is just like an assumption off the top of my head as well. So I don't know, because I like Frost Heart, I do, but I didn't love Frost Heart. Like it's not a favorite for me, but they do just look so good together. Or I could unhaul Malamander and Gargantus, which I did enjoy, but I didn't continue on with. It comes down to that thing again, like, am I going to reread these? No, so I don't need them for my own collection. But if I were to ever have kids, would this be a cool series to read to them? Yes. And once again, these are some pretty nice additions. I do have, though, up here, I have The Land of Raw by Jenny McLaughlin and A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison. I've heard really good things about A Pinch of Magic, but Land of Raw, not so much. I mean, this isn't technically my middle grade shelf, but this bottom shelf down here is just full of miscellaneous stuff that I don't even really think about the fact that I own, but they're just like random things. And I do have these 3 Lonely Planet guidebooks, which I didn't want to unhaul because obviously like I used these when I went to these 3 places, but they're also very out of date now, so the information in them would no longer be relevant. So I don't really need them, but I feel like they're almost souvenirs, which I also feel like is ridiculous. So I did come down here with the intention of unhauling Frost Heart, but I actually think I'm going to be unhauling my Lonely Planet guidebooks. Just really don't think I have any need to keep them. So with that in mind, I kind of want to put that down here. I kind of want to put Winterhouse up here where it belongs. So can I move? No, I haven't quite made that much space, have I? I could move the Myths and Legends because that's like a kid's book. Oh my god, is that a Polaroid? Wow, look at that. Oh no. My bad, guys. Wow, I really did not think that they were going to fit there. And Winterhouse can now go here, but I have like way more space than I need, and I don't have any more middle grade to put in it unless we take some stuff from the top, which I could get these 2 down here where they actually belong. So this now leaves us with a gap up here, and I don't really know what to put in it. I do have a manga that I had to take off the shelves because I've recently hauled Dream in Some Volume 6 and this new volume of Orange. So to get these both onto the shelves, I had to take this one off, so this one can obviously go back in. I'm not sure I have anything else that classes as either children's or classics. I do have a little bit of non-fiction, and I have these like little guidebooks like on different law species. Oh, they don't all fit. In the cart that I have where books go to die, I did just find Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, so that can definitely go up here. I'm doing a really good job actually of emptying that cart. I've still got space for like one more book. I actually think I'm going to leave this here because I do still have a gap, but I have no middle grade or manga to fill it, so I guess that this is now just a space that I have for more manga or middle grade, if I ever buy any. So I'm now starting to get confused looking at my other shelves between books that are actually for children and books that I read when I was a child, which are vastly different. So I've got the stacks back into some semblance of order so that we can pick our next book. And looking at the prompts, what is a prompt? Looking at the prompts for Clearursht, the one that we just completed was of course for the mini boss, so read a book that doesn't fit on the shelves. Now it does. And the next prompt that I haven't completed is to read a book that I keep forgetting that I have. So the stacks are obviously a great contender for this because a lot of random things get shoved in here, but then there's also like these shelves here have lots of random things on that I just kind of keep forgetting about and never really prioritizing. But I guess we'll try and pick from the stacks first. I know that I did account for this prompt in my November TBR, and the book that I think I had in for it was The Weight of the Stars by Kate Ancrum, so part of me kind of just wants to go with that one because I've already assigned it to the prompt. There are a couple more that would be really good, like Romanov by Nadine Brands, Blood and Moonlight by Erin Beatty. I think though I am going to go with The Weight of the Stars. I feel like that's an easy decision. So The Weight of the Stars by Kate Ancrum is a book that I picked up shortly after reading The Wicker King and really enjoying it. The Wicker King is a really quick read and it has like the elements of a horror and a thriller, so it's not one that I remember a bunch, but I think that this is somewhat associated to it, but it's not directly related. You don't really have to have read The Wicker King to pick up The Weight of Stars, but I do feel like there is some small connection there. And The Wicker King is about two boys and they devolve, or at least one of them is devolving into madness, and as the book goes on, like the pages get darker and darker along the edges to like follow his descent. I really enjoyed that book. I thought that it was a really fun reading experience, and it's one of those that you can almost read in one sitting because it's so compelling. So I wanted to pick something else up from Kate Ancrum, and because this is not directly related to The Wicker King, it has been on my TBR for a number of years now, so I don't even really remember what this one is about. So this is following a girl who's from a trailer park and she wants to be an astronaut or work in something to do with space, but she knows that this isn't really an option for her because she comes from such a poor family and doesn't have the means to be able to achieve her dream. So she's settled into a life of delinquency, but she meets a girl who is described as a loner, and this girl's mother is an astronaut who's gone on a one-way trip into space, and this girl waits to hear from her mother every night over the radio signals. So these two, I think, become friends. I'm expecting this to kind of be like heartwarming. I actually have just noticed towards the end of the book it has like the same kind of thing as The Wicker King, where the pages start, I'm not reading any of this because obviously this is super spoilers, but like the pages start to change as you get further into the book, which is really cool. And I like that Kate Ancrum has these kind of like really interesting stories with a little bit of a unique reading experience because of those little like changes to the paper. And this is also, like it says 3 hours at the top of some of them and 3 days, so I think that there's going to be some sort of interesting timeline in here as well. So I'm about to film my November unboxing, which is quite a large one, as you can probably tell, and we're not going to talk about it in this video, okay? I am resigned to my fate at this point. We are never going to be ending Shelve It or Scrap It, and I hope that you're okay with that because I'm just having to be okay with that. But I am checking in with you guys because I'm 150 pages into The Weight of Stars by Kate Ancrum, and the thing about Kate Ancrum is that while their books are like fantastical or a little bit sci-fi leaning, they are at their core a contemporary story. So this reads very much like a young adult contemporary, and it deals more with contemporary issues than it does with these speculative elements. So in this, we are following a young girl whose parents actually died. So when she was a little bit younger, both of her parents died tragically. One of them worked at NASA and one of them, I think, had some sort of like building or construction company. And since they died, she has been kind of left in the care of her younger brother. He's only a couple of years younger than her. He's a teenager. But one day he also came home with a random baby that he found, and we don't have any more context into where he found this child, but they also have this little baby that they're looking after, and they live in a trailer, and they have a group of friends that are essentially a collection of misfits, people who have been going through hard times, and the main character has kind of taken them under her wing, and they've created this kind of like found family. And because it is quite obvious to everybody that this is something that she does, she is asked by her teacher to do the same to the new girl that has just joined the class. And this girl is the daughter of a astronaut that, well, not an astronaut actually, she was a teenage girl that was sent into space. There was this independent space company that was recruiting teenage girls, like obviously like 18 years ago, to be sent into space on this mission. And so this girl has been raised by somebody else who worked for that company, and she spends every night sat on her roof trying to receive transmissions from her mother's ship. She can't send any transmissions back. She just kind of wants to know that her mother is still out there and still alive. So in the process of trying to rehabilitate this girl, the main character, Ryan, accidentally startles her. She falls off the roof and gets injured. And so Ryan has to kind of like step in and start listening out for these transmissions so that the girl doesn't miss anything while she's away. And them two obviously start to grow closer. I don't know whether this is just a story of friendship or whether it's going to turn into anything romantic. Kate Ancrum books do tend to be incredibly diverse, and this is no exception. We have like poly relationships in here. We have a bunch of different communities represented to create a very like rich tapestry of characters within Kate Ancrum's books. The other thing to note about Kate Ancrum is that their books are incredibly short. This is a whole chapter and that's not unusual for this book. The chapter after that is this long, and I figured out that the time at the top of the pages is the time that has passed between the two chapters. So the one that I'm about to start takes place 38 minutes after the previous one, and then the next one takes place an hour after that. So it's an incredibly easy, quick read, which is why I got through the Wicker King so quickly. And these short, sharp chapters really help to kind of build the narrative and propel the narrative. Now, the way that this differs from the Wicker King is that I'm finding that the story isn't progressing as quickly as I would like, because we have this descent into madness in the Wicker King that starts subtly and like kind of snowballs. This, for all intents and purposes, right now 150 pages in, is still a young adult contemporary story, and I do know, like, we've had an element of the plot where it seems like these girls could be heading into space, which, as I said, is our main character's dream, or I think it was stemming from the fact that her mother worked at NASA. So I'm thinking that it is going to potentially go in that direction, but I am still expecting the themes and the focus of this novel to stay on those contemporary aspects. So yeah, having a good time with it. I'm not as gripped as I was in the Wicker King so far, but I'm definitely excited to see like how the rest of this unfolds. So for the second time in the last month, I have thought that a book is sci-fi. That absolutely is not. I really need to stop seeing stars and eclipses and space things on covers and assuming that that indicates science fiction, because this one is just straight up contemporary. I think that I assumed that there would be some sort of speculative or sci-fi element in here because the Wicker King by Kate Ancrum does have that. It is still, the Wicker King is still a contemporary, even though it does have that fantastical element, but because there is a little bit of a blending of reality in that book that presents this fantastical element, I did think that we were going to get something similar in this one. However, this one is literally just a straight up young adult contemporary. I also wish that I'd have looked up how this is connected to the Wicker King before I had read it. I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to get spoiled for this one, and I was worried that the connection to the Wicker King would obviously, like, if I looked it up, that I would be spoiled. However, the connection isn't really a spoiler. You can absolutely read this without having read the Wicker King. You just won't understand the connection. And honestly, it's been so long since I did read the Wicker King that I completely missed it, and I had to look it up after I'd finished the book. And I'm kind of sad about that because I would have loved to have read this with that knowledge, and that is why I technically should have read this a little bit closer to the Wicker King. Honestly, that was just me being dumb because I expected it to connect in a different way than it did. This is set a couple of decades after the Wicker King, and so there are some characters that are represented in this novel, and you kind of get like a follow-up of what happened in the Wicker King in that regard. But like I said, if you read this one without the Wicker King, it absolutely makes no difference. I mean, I pretty much read this not finding the connection to the Wicker King, and it went right over my head. But this one, like I said, is a straight up young adult contemporary, and for that I almost gave this book 3 stars. However, the ending of this was perfect. When I say I almost gave it 3 stars, it's not because it's a young adult contemporary, but I just wasn't super connected to the story. We have strong themes of found family in here like we do in the Wicker King, and all of the characters that we have in here are people who are dealing with some sort of trauma. They all come from different backgrounds. I know our main character is living in a trailer park right now, so she's not the most affluent, but some of these kids do come from richer families, and they still have different struggles in their life that we have represented throughout this book. I would have liked to do a little bit of a deep dive into some of those characters a little bit more, but I feel like Kate Ancrum really relies on the implications of what is going on in their lives as opposed to laying everything out for you. Obviously, this is a book of few words. It's almost 400 pages, but like I said, the chapters are quick. We have a lot of like half pages in here, so in terms of like the actual content you get in this book, it's not 400 pages worth of a traditional novel, and so we really just focus on the matter of hand. And something that I really like about Kate Ancrum is that the side characters do have a lot going on, and maybe we don't see that. Maybe they're not fully fleshed out in that regard, in that we see their lives unfold on the page, but they are 3-dimensional characters. They're not just there to fill space. They have their own things going on, their own backstories, their own trauma that they're dealing with that we don't see too much because we are focusing on the story of Ryan and Alexandria, but that doesn't mean that it's not there, you know, like we are all the main characters in our own lives, but that doesn't mean that everybody else around us is not the main character in their lives. They have stuff going on, even though it's not not at like the forefront of our perception, I guess. So I typically don't read a lot of young adult contemporary anymore. It's just not something at the stage in my life that I'm particularly gripped by, which is why I was settling on kind of a 3-star for this. It's not that it wasn't good, it's just that I wasn't particularly engrossed in it. But the way that this book ended, I can't talk about it because obviously I want you to explore this book for yourself. But the last, like, I want to say 15, 20 pages of this, we kind of reach a conclusion of the novel, and then the way that the rest of the story is told through the lenses of various people, should I say, I thought was genius, because this is a book that deals with space exploration, right? Alexandria is spending every night looking up to the stars, trying to catch these radio waves from a mother that she's literally never known. This deals with the fascination that people have with space and the human desire to discover more about space and to kind of see it with your own eyes. But it also deals with the vastness and the loneliness of space, and how going into space, especially if you're doing something like a one-way trip, which the character in this book is doing, is immense. Like, it's life ending, because you will never return to a regular human life once you've made that decision. And obviously, as humans, we need social interaction, we need sunlight. Like, I know more than anyone that we need sunlight. So then going into this vast unknown with a handful of people and never seeing another person for the rest of your life, never having a normal life and normal interactions, is honestly a little bit too hard for me to comprehend. Some of the decisions that the main characters make in this book, knowing that, blow my mind. Like, I could never, honestly, but I do obviously understand why people are fascinated with space. So I think that the way that the end of this story was told, given the topics that we delve into in this book regarding space travel, loved it. So I gave this one a 4-star rating. It's typically, like, it's not a book that is for me, and I think that that is something that I found with The Wicker King. Like, for its genre, it was an outstanding book, but it's not the typical kind of thing that I enjoy. So in terms of the quality, I think the 2 books that I've read from Kay Ancrum, both very solid, would recommend them if they sound like something you'd be interested in. But for me personally, not my typical read, so I can appreciate how good these books are without them being a super impactful book for me, if that makes sense. So with that in mind, I am going to be scrapping The Weight of the Stars. I did scrap The Wicker King, and I'm pretty sure I gave The Wicker King 5 stars because I just love the way that Kay Ancrum tells stories, and I think that that is why I have picked up a couple of their books, even though I'm not super into young adult contemporary. Like, if a book was sold to me just based on it being a young adult contemporary, I wouldn't pick it up anymore. But there is something a little bit unique and special about the way Kay Ancrum's stories are told. So I am going to be scrapping this one, but I am really glad that I finally read it, which means we are going to be going back to the stacks for the 3rd book of this vlog. So here we are again in the corner of doom, and the next prompt that I need to fulfill for Clear Your Shit is Sapphic Side Quest. So obviously a book with a sapphic relationship. The Weight of the Stars would have counted towards that as well, because it features a lot of queer characters actually, but there is a prominent sapphic relationship in there as well. But let's start by seeing if I can tell you off the top of my head what I know has a sapphic relationship. I'm pretty sure that The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Caruso has one. This Wicked Fate by Kaylin Bayron is the sequel to This Poison Heart. Now, in the first book, I would say that the main character had strong bi energy, although I don't remember it being confirmed, but I do feel like this goes down a more sapphic route in the sequel. Human Rights by Juno Dawson, one of the 4 main characters, is in a sapphic relationship in that one. I think those are the only ones that I know for sure off the top of my head. Now, I kind of want to go with Human Rights because that is the final book in a series that I really love. The Last Hour Between Worlds would be great as a contender for one that I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy, but I think I'm actually going to pick up This Wicked Fate by Kaylin Bayron because I know for a fact that Human Rights by Juno Dawson will fit in for other prompts. Actually, you know, there's a prompt to read a book with a blue cover. This also has a very blue cover, so would count for that. But this is the 2nd book in a duology. I actually read book 1 for an episode of Shelve It or Scrap It. I think it's the one we did where I read books by authors where I owned more than one book from them but hadn't read anything that they'd written. And if I didn't like it, then I had to unhaul all of the author's work that I owned. So This Poison Heart really took me by surprise because I really did not think that I was going to enjoy it. I thought it was going to be like a very middle of the road young adult fantasy, and I ended up having a really good time with it. So it is set in New York State. We start off in Brooklyn and we are following a girl who has actually 2 mothers. She has been adopted by 2 women, and somebody gets in touch with them who sees that she is in charge of the main character's aunt's estate, and this woman has died, and she's left some stuff to the main character, who I think is called Brie, in her will. So they eventually decide to go and investigate this, because living in Brooklyn, running a flower shop, obviously, like, times are hard, running a retail space literally anywhere in the world for the most part. So they decide to take a chance and head upstate and see what this estate could be, and it is literally an estate. It is this big, enormous manor with these rambling, sprawling gardens, and in the gardens, our main character finds a poison garden, and she actually has an affinity towards plants, which has been causing her some trouble at home, because sometimes the plants respond to her emotions, maybe start growing towards her, and people have started to notice. So when she heads to this like small town where nobody knows her and it's quiet and she has a lot more privacy, she can take the time that she needs to really hone these abilities and explore them without fear. But she realizes, as she gets to know the people in this town, that this poison garden and the apothecary that is attached to it, that is run from the mansion, is very important to the local community, and because of that, a lot of people seek to take it from her. While I did really enjoy the first book, I do feel like this is a series where I need to read book 2 sometime soon, otherwise I'm going to have not necessarily lost interest, but while I had a really good time with book 1, it's not one where I would say if I didn't read the sequel for 2 years, then I would go out of my way to reread book 1 to prepare me for the sequel. I think that if we got to that point, then the level of investment to reread a book just wouldn't be there. So that is why I have decided to pick this one for this prompt, to make sure it gets done. And I'm excited to finish a series before the end of the year, because I think I was on Patreon sprints and I counted how many series I finished. I don't even want to talk about how many I've started, although I'm going to have to when we get to the end of year content. But my ratio is not good, guys. And in the last couple of weeks of the year, I want to finish as many series as possible, which we'll see how that goes. This book is a little bit shorter than I thought it was. And I mean, I obviously didn't think that it was enormous or anything, but it's actually only just over 300 pages, whereas I thought that it was more in the 350 to 400 page bracket. So I'm already 40% of the way through on 122 pages. And my initial thoughts on this one is that it is a little bit overwhelming, and I was 100% right in my assumption that the best thing to do with this is to read it as close as possible after book 1, because the end of book 1 is a scene where all of the characters pretty much that have been introduced in book 1 are all in one place. So there's people who we've been introduced to like fairly recently, there's people who've been around since like the very early stages of the book, but because of the events, they all end up in the same place at the end of book 1, and book 2 just carries on from that scene. It's just a direct continuation. So instead of being eased back into book 2, although we do have a slight bit of a recap of what happened at the end of book 1, you have all of these side characters with very little context as to who they are, all in one room trying to resolve the situation from the end of the first book. So it took me a little second to get reacquainted with everybody. I have done that now, but I do think that potentially Kaylin Bayron has been a little bit ambitious with this duology, given that it is just a duology, and both of the books are fairly short, because Greek mythology plays a big part in this book, and it starts off as a pretty simple contemporary fantasy story. This girl has magical powers and she's immune to poisons, but as we get further into it, we discover that there is a potential connection to some of the Greek gods and goddesses and the magical powers that our main character is manifesting. So that also builds throughout the first book. So when we get into book 2, it is now all about mythology, and it's getting a little heavier on the fantasy, but I don't think that it is doing a very good job at grounding and establishing that fantasy within this real world setting. It is very much relying on the reader having a knowledge of like the gods and the myths, and it is constantly joked about when one of the characters asks our main character Brie whether she's familiar with, for example, Hercules, and she's like, well, I've seen the Disney movie. So you only really need like a base knowledge of all of them, but then when it's giving you just a little bit more information to fill in the characters like Brie that aren't so familiar with mythology, it is a little bit heavy-handed and a little bit info dumpy, and the fantastical elements are no longer feeling as seamless and well integrated as they were in book 1. This is also really heavy on the action from very early on. I realized at the end of the first book that the task that the main characters were going to have to accomplish to wrap this series up was going to be quite an ambitious one, and I think for the sake of this being just a duology with once again quite short books, the task is made a little bit easier, I feel, but still there is a lot to do considering the fantastical element is ramped up by 100 in book 2 in comparison to book 1, and you're kind of establishing all of that, setting all of these events in motion, but also trying to start this task, achieve it, and then bring it to completion in 300 pages. So right now it's just a lot. It's a lot. And I think one of my favorite things about the first book is that it did have that contemporary fantasy element. As you guys know, one of my favorite things is a contemporary fantasy that has some sort of like witchy or occult element. This did branch a little bit more into the fantastical, which obviously has evolved. But when it started out, it just felt like a girl in upstate New York with a magical power on a poison garden that was helping the local community. And I think the way that it was told was similar to those stories that I like, even though the fantastical element was a little bit different. And now that we're getting into the more fantastical side of things, but still sticking with the contemporary roots of this story, I feel like it's getting a little bit muddled and it just isn't quite working for me. But we'll see how the rest of this plays out. I need a lot to happen in this book. I mean, a lot has to happen in this book to bring it to a close in 170, I think 85 maybe pages. So let's hope it sticks the landing. So I finished this Wicked Fate, and boy, do I wish that I hadn't. And you know what? I can't even say anything about this because you guys warned me. I'm pretty sure that when I read book 1, there was a lot of you guys in the comments that said you also really liked book 1, but book 2 took a turn and not a good one. And damn, were you right. I wanted to DNF this book so many times, and the only reason that I didn't is because it is a relatively short book and it is a sequel. And not only a sequel, it's the final book in a duology. So once I've read this, I'm done with the series. I did also really like book 1, but as I said to you guys when I hit the 40% mark where I checked in, this goes from 0 to 100 on the fantastical scale real quick, or shall we say like 30 to 100, because I feel like in terms of the fantastical elements, it's quite light on them in book 1. It's a contemporary fantasy where the majority of the book is contemporary, the majority of the issues dealt with are contemporary, and maybe about 30% of the content is fantastical, and then also the plot centers around the fantasy in here. But then in this one, we have Greek gods, which yes, we spoke about the mythology in the first book, but more from a historical perspective. We had multiple Greek gods in this one. We had new people with new powers. I would actually say that the main character took a very back seat in this book, and the whole beginning of this was just her observing all of the other people doing the thing. So they were all making the plans, they were talking about how to execute the plan. She was literally just along for the ride, and the stakes were super high for her because if they achieved the task that they were setting out to do, then it was her that would kind of reap the reward. It was her that wanted the reward, and she was the one motivated to carry out the task, but pretty much everybody else did it, and her power with the plans came in handy, but she was just very much a passenger on this entire quest. And for the first 40%, like I said, it was a lot, but the issue is that after that, it never really got better. The only part of this book that I actually enjoyed at all was the end, and that is because you expect the end of a fantasy book to ramp up in pace and ramp up in action. But then the problem is that this entire thing was pretty much just one note. The action, the fantasy, the pace was pedal to the metal through the entire thing, and I did not have a good time tonally. Very, very different to book 1. This is what I assumed that this Poison Heart was going to be when I said that I didn't think that I was going to enjoy it. I thought that it was going to be a relatively fast-paced, action-packed young adult fantasy, and I really liked the tone of this Poison Heart, but this is more in line with what I thought the story of this duology was going to be in terms of the themes and the style of the book, and so I was disappointed. I gave this one 2 stars, and honestly, I feel like that is being generous. I was going to say I don't think that this is terrible, but I do think that following book 1, it is completely different and really just lost the thread of what was great about this Poison Heart. So in that regard, like, I don't think that this is a great book, and I'll be honest, I didn't really enjoy very much about it because the main criticism, I didn't really have many criticisms of this Poison Heart, but I did feel like the dialogue could be cheesy in parts. The relationship of the main character's parents felt kind of caricaturish in parts because it was like a little bit cheesy and upbeat, and that is pretty much the only thing that was consistent and in line with book 1 was the kind of like cheesy dialogue. So I didn't really like very much about this book at all, but I do feel like I can't give it 1 star, so I gave it 2. But 2 for me means fine, and I didn't like this book. Maybe it's a 1. I just really felt like it was a completely different story to book 1, and I didn't like that. So, as you can probably guess, I am going to be scrapping this, and I'm also probably going to be scrapping book 1 as well, because I don't really have any need to keep hold of book 2 without book 1. I mean, I've done that before. I think I held on to From Blood and Ash, even though I unhauled the rest of the series. And actually, speaking about unhauls, I am going to take this Poison Heart off my shelves tomorrow, because we have quite a bit of rearranging to do, as I filmed my entire own TBR video today and Mum was at a workout. But along the way, I've unhauled I think around 20 books, and that's made a few gaps on my shelves that I haven't filled yet, because I wanted to do that with you guys. So obviously it's better to just do that in daylight. So we'll get this Poison Heart off my shelves as well, and we'll go through and fill all of the gaps. And I might talk to you guys about what I'm unhauling, because I've already posted what is my final unhaul of the year, and then I've just pulled like 20 books out. I think there's also an additional 4 books that I've set aside to unhaul since I filmed that as well. So I don't know whether to just like throw up a bonus unhaul or just include it in this vlog, but I do very much want to pick our next book, because I don't want to be coming to you guys in the morning before coffee trying to figure out what I'm going to read, so that I can have a nice cozy morning as I like to. So in terms of Clearursht, that one 100% fulfilled the Sapphic side quest prompt, and now we are moving on to pick a book at random out of a selection of 5. When I saw this prompt originally, I think what I was going to do was randomly select 5 books and then pick one, but the prompt says to pick 5 and then randomly select. So let's go to the stacks, I guess, and pull some stuff out. Okay, so I will pull you guys closer in just a second, but I do have one video that I would like to post before the end of the year that needs a little bit of work. And by that, what I mean is that I would very much like to find a fantasy romance or romantasy book that has been published this year that I very much enjoy and would recommend. So I think we are going to try and find that, because the book that I think I'm going to enjoy that we have in the stacks, oh no, that's not published this year. That's unfortunate. Let's pull you closer for a better look. Okay, so the book that I had in mind that I wanted to read, that I've been kind of waiting to squeeze into this episode, if possible, Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. I've heard really good things about this. It is like, the synopsis seems to be very typical romantasy, but typical in a good way, you know, like things that I really enjoy. But I've heard it has a little bit of a different take on it, and it also involves monsters. So I think we will include this one. Ideally, this one would win. Now for the stacks, it's really unfortunate, because down here I have When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, and I also have Quicksilver by Callie Hart, both very well loved fantasy romance books, but also published in 2024, I think, so I can't include those. I could include Metal Slinger by Rachel Snyder. The problem is though, is that I haven't heard amazing things about this. I think that including this would be a risk. Like if this was the one that was selected, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it. But I think for that reason, we should kind of throw it in as a wild card. We also have The Everqueen by L.J. Andrews. Really want to continue this series. This one is a indie published book that has been traditionally published this year, so I could swing it that way. But it is a sequel, and for this specific thing, I don't want sequels, even though for every other goal I have in life, sequels are great. And then from the stacks, I feel like the only other one that we have is Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. This one I've heard pretty good things about. I've heard that of the books of its kind that have been published this year, this one is the best of the 3. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it, but I do feel like we should include this one. Okay, so here we have 3, and I need to find 2 more. There's definitely one that I have in mind that's upstairs, and that one is Windweaver by Julie Johnson. Absolutely stunning fairy loot edition, one of my favorites. And this one narrowly missed out on being featured in the Romantasy Rundown project I did, because this one was the April book, I think, for the 2025 Fairy Loot Romantasy sub, and I capped it at March. But I heard amazing things about this one, and I would love to read it so that when the sequel is announced by Fairy Loot, I know whether I need to get my hands on it. Also think there's a big chance that I'll enjoy this one. And you know what? I was going to select my fifth one from downstairs, but I do have Dance of Lies by Brittany Arena, and I've recently heard really good things about this. So once again, this one's a Fairy Loot edition, but I'm pretty sure that this came in their adult sub, not the romantasy. I do still think that it has an enemies to lovers story though. I didn't know if it was going to be for me because it heavily features dance. Yes, this one is from the adult fantasy box, and I do think that it still has a romance in it. I'm pretty sure that I heard that this is a enemies to lovers or a hate to love story that feels kind of like old school fantasy romance and features lots of like yearning. So I feel like that one would be a good shout as well. I'll take both of these down and I'll show you what else I was thinking of. Okay guys, welcome to my shame. These are my other stacks that I've been hiding from you guys. I haven't really. These are just the books that I've kind of hauled the most recently over the last couple of months. I have been staggering my hauls, making their way into the stacks, but because I hauled so many books today and we're going to fill loads of gaps on the shelves with books from the stacks and also books from here, I am going to put whatever's left of these stacks into the main stacks at the end of this episode, and then we should be good and caught up. But recently I received The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen. Now I just need to check because I don't know if this is an indie that's been re-released, and if so, it will count, but I know the sequel came out this year, so I don't know if this is a 2024 release. As I've been sent a finished copy like with a sprayed edge very recently, I feel like it's 2024. Wait, I've gone too far. Where is the publishing page, man? Copyright Abigail Owen 2024, published by Penguin Michael Joseph 2025. I feel like I need to fact check this, but I have heard really good things. Oh my days. Abigail Owen has written a lot more books than I knew about. Okay, so this is a contender. And then the other option that I had very, very recent release, To Cage a Wild Bird by Brookfast. This I literally just unboxed. It's my most recent romantasy fairy loot. I haven't heard enough reviews of this to know whether it's a fantasy romance that I would enjoy, but I've seen a lot of arcs flying around because this is one of the first books that Fairy Loot have published from their new publishing imprint. So now I have 7 books. I think what I'm gonna do is fact check this one, and if this is indeed published this year or can be counted as published this year, if it's been traditionally published this year, then I'm going to include this and put To Cage a Wild Bird and A Dance with Lies back for now. Okay guys, but wait 1 second, hear me out, because I just remembered that I've also very, very recently received from Penguin Michael Joseph Stacia Stark's newest release, which I think it comes out next week, which is We Who Will Die. But then this one's risky because I think I love Stacia Stark, but this isn't even out yet, so I don't know anybody's thoughts on it, and I would rather this be a book that I really love, because that's what I'm looking for, a recommendation. I did just want to say as well, if you guys are wondering why there's like paper on the floor under the books, it's because if you put hardback books in a stack like this on laminate and you try and slide the stack and there's any kind of like dust or tiny bits of dirt on the floor, it will scratch the hardcovers, and that has happened to me many a time. So if they're on paper, I can just like slide them around when I need to. I did my research on The Games Gods Play and it all came up sad. So this was originally published in the UK by a different publisher, and it has now been republished this year by Penguin Michael Joseph, who now publish Red Tower books for the UK market. So I am going to count this as a 2024 release, which is interesting because if it's an indie series that has been traditionally published this year, I'm willing to use that loophole, but I'm apparently not willing to use this one. So I'm taking this one out of the mix. I'm also taking out A Dance of Lies, and I have chosen not to go with To Cage a Wild Bird, and instead I'm putting something a little risky in, which is We Who Will Die. I've heard great things about Stacia Stark, which leads me to believe that I will enjoy her work. This one is like the Roman Empire, but with vampires. So I'm unsure about the vampires, but I'm really excited about the Roman Empire. And then we are also going to be going with these 4 that I selected previously. So that was really hard. And this isn't even the decision of which one I'm actually going to read. This was just deciding the 5 books that we were going to be choosing from. So the one that I really want is Shield of Sparrows. I would be happy with Shield of Sparrows or Windweaver. My third acceptable choice would be We Who Will Die. Rose in Chains, unsure about, but I would rather Rose in Chains came up than Metal Slinger because I feel like that one is the riskiest one of the 5, but I've chosen to keep this one in the mix because it did come from the stacks as opposed to being pulled from somewhere else. Okay, so I threw together a really quick spinner wheel. Let's see what comes up. Yes! Oh my god, I can't believe that worked in my favor. Saying that though, I've actually kind of, I've got really excited about the stack of books. I was getting kind of hyped about We Who Will Die, especially because this is only released at the end of the month as well, so it would have been great for me to read it ahead of time, especially because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be getting a special edition of this sometime soon as well. I also think, oh, Windweaver's pretty thick, but Shield of Sparrows is one of the chunkier options that we could have picked, so let's hope that I get really sucked into this one and have a great time with it. So as I said, this has a pretty generic fantasy romance synopsis, but it does have the inclusion of monsters, which makes it sound a little bit more interesting to me. I know that it's a princess, or I think it's a princess, and her blood seals some kind of pact or treaty, but it's not supposed to be her blood, and she ends up being escorted to the place where she has to seal the treaty by somebody who doesn't like her. Who is he? A monster hunter, I think. Oh, I think that the monster hunter might be taking her to marry a prince for like alliances. I don't know, it's kind of a vague synopsis. It also does the thing that I actually don't like. It's more common with contemporary romance, and I think that this is really interesting because Devney Perry is a contemporary romance author. I'm pretty sure that this is her first fantasy book, and the synopsis is actually written from the perspective of the main character. Regardless, I hope that I love it. I've been excited to read this for a while. It is a book that was actually released on my birthday this year, and it was one of the first books that I received from Penguin Michael Joseph when I became an ambassador for them. So I've been really excited to get to it because of that as well. This is the one book that I wanted to read this month. If I don't love this book, I'm going to be so upset. So I decided that posting an extra video this month would just be far too much hassle. So I am going to run through the books that I'm unhauling here. I counted 21 books that I pulled off my shelves. The majority of them are ones that I've already read, and I found like extra copies, or I've just realized that I have no need to keep hold of them. And then we have some things that have just been sitting on my shelves unread as well. So we have this Savage Grace by Breda Spain, and this is one that my mum picked up secondhand. She used to go secondhand shopping. My mum is sadly not with us anymore, which is why this book has still been on my shelves. And she'd pick up things that made her think of me, and she picked this book up and thought that it would be something that I would enjoy. And honestly, she's right, it probably would have been, but I never read it, and now I only hang on to it because of the sentimentality that my mum was out and she thought of me and she picked it up. But I think I just need to accept that this is not happening. I have a couple of classics. I have The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now I actually already have a different edition of this. I've got the Penguin English Library edition, so I don't know why I'm keeping hold of this edition with the back ripped off it. This is the one that I actually read, but it's not like it's a vanity edition or anything, so that needs to go. The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I despise this book. It's one of the worst classics I've ever read, and I know that it has its purpose, but the main character is just so insufferable and obnoxious that it's not an enjoyable reading experience. And once again, this isn't even a nice edition. If I'd have hung on to this and it was like a Penguin English Library, I'd understand why I kept it, but I have no need for this on my shelves. If y'all are secondhand shoppers, like I used to be. The reason why I'm not actually is only because I have so many books that I don't really go out of my way to buy any. The majority of the new books coming in are ones that are sent to me for various reasons. But for those of you who do secondhand shop, you will know that finding fantasy books, like adult, epic and high fantasy secondhand, is really hard. So when I was at a car boot and I found all of these books by Karen Miller, this was in a box of like exclusively fantasy books. So I found all of these by the same author and I was like, okay, cool, amazing. I then came home, looked them up and realized that the ratings on these are not really great, and I have so many of them. They're so thick. There's so many 1 and 2 star reviews that say that they're really boring, and I just don't feel like I need these 5 mass market paperbacks on my shelves anymore. If I do want to read these in the future, then I can probably pick them up from my library or get an ebook on Libby or something, but they're just essentially a brick on my paperback shelves at the minute. I am also sadly going to be unhauling this proof copy of Cursed by Marissa Meyer, and this is completely on me because the publisher reached out to me whatever year that this was published and asked if I wanted to receive it, and I love Marissa Meyer, so I said yes. And then I realized that it was a sequel. I didn't have book 1. I intended to get book 1 so I could review both of them, and then I just never did. And fast forward 3 years, still haven't bothered to pick up book 1, so at this point I'm accepting that that's just something that I'm not going to do. And once again, if I wanted to read this one, then I can very easily access this from a library or Libby. I am going to be unhauling my Illumicrate edition of Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This came when I was a rep for Illumicrate, and they would send the reps like the big single book boxes that they would do, so I received like a Daughter of Smoke and Bone box. I don't like the new covers for this series. I have the original hardbacks and I adore them, and I kept hold of this one because because it was signed. And obviously it is a special edition. And I was like, okay, well, if I love the series, then I'll probably want more than one edition of it. And even if that were to be true, because I still haven't read that series, I don't think it would be this one. I really don't like these covers. The Short Second Life of Britannia. I was a massive Twilight girly back in the day. Like, I read Twilight 15 times between the first and the last book being published. I was a big fan. But I never picked up The Short Second Life of Britannia, so I picked this up secondhand to be able to do so. But at this point, am I ever going to reread Twilight so that I can read this in context? No. Our Daughter by Shavita Thakrar. This one I think is an Owl Crate edition. I know I had the Fairy Loot and the Owl Crate, and I kept the Owl Crate, I think was the one that I preferred. The problem with this is that it does sound really good. It's like a celestial magic system, Indian author, Indian myth. I haven't heard a single good review for this book, so at this point my desire to pick it up amongst everything else I own is really low. Goddess in the Machine by Laura Beth Johnson. I just saw this and was like, don't really want to read it. I miss the days of glittery edges though. Can we bring those back? Because I really do miss them. I hope I haven't unhauled all of my glittery edge books because they don't do them anymore. The Immortal Game by Talia Rothschild and A.C. Harvey. This was another one that came in a subscription box. This one was the Abraxas box that I repped for a little while. I just have no desire to pick this up if I'm being honest, so it's just going to live on my shelves forever. So that's all the stuff that I took off shelves from downstairs. These three came off my book cart as opposed to my shelves. And then when I went upstairs and I did the romance shelves, I found a bunch of stuff on there because I only tend to go to those shelves like if I'm there for a specific reason. I don't sit and stare at them like I do the ones in this room. So when I went upstairs to do those, I was like, there's a ton of stuff here that I do not need. I have a paperback copy of It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I do really like this book, but I don't need a paperback copy because I do have a hardback. The Last Raven by Helen Glynn Jones. Do you remember when I hauled this? This was the first book in the Forbidden Wing subscription, and I wanted to get on the subscription, so I had to get the first book. This has a very low average rating on Goodreads, just like everything that Forbidden Wing Unlocked Library put out, and I have absolutely no interest in it at all. I literally only got it to get on the sub. Now 1 year has passed and I have not had a single book. I'm still on the subscriptions. Haven't had a single book from Locked Library or Forbidden Wing because their picks are just so mediocre, in my opinion. Okay, don't get offended if you like them. I'm happy for you, but I just don't want to read that book. Once again, something that I picked up secondhand a long time ago, First Grave on the Right and Fifth Grave Past the Light by Dorinda Jones. This was when I was just looking for anything remotely fantastical in charity shops. These are a paranormal series. Very few paranormal series work for me, and I'm not really looking to get into one right now that I haven't even started. Might as well just unhaul it. And the first book, the fifth book is fine, but the first book is not a very nice secondhand copy in terms of like the condition it's currently in. Priest by Sierra Simone. There are a couple of books here. There's Priest and also Lady of Darkness that I have kept hold of because I met the authors at Rare and I had them both signed and personalized. However, Priest was one of the worst books that I read in the year that I read it. I loved Supplicant, which is a novella I read from Sierra Simone. Hated Priest. I've ranted about it a lot. And Lady of Darkness, I liked the first two books and then I eventually just DNF'd this series, I think, with one book to go because I'd just had enough. The main character's insufferable, and I kind of kept this as just like a placeholder because it was signed and personalized, but I don't need it. And then finally, I have Charlie Travesty by Jessie Elliott and KJ Sutton. This one is a series of vampire novellas that were bound up, but this series is now incomplete. It's not going to be continued, and it's not my favorite KJ Sutton either, so this one can also go. So now that I've told you what I'm getting rid of, it is time to fill the gaps in the shelves. I'm going to try and fill them kind of equally with books from the stacks and also from the stacks of books that aren't the stacks, you know, and we'll kind of see what we end up with because it doesn't matter because all of those books at the end of this episode are going into the main stacks anyway, so reducing from either pile has the same effect. Okay, so first off we need to scrap this Poison Heart. So from the stacks I've pulled out Blood and Moonlight by Erin Beatty, which would go right on top here. And then I don't know if this one's going to fit, but I have A Song of Wreaths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown that came off the other stacks. Elliot Brooks. Oh, this would work in terms of going here actually. And this is out of order, but it only really fits on this stack. Well, perfect fit, not bad. So the main issue that I'm finding here is that I'm running out of small hardbacks, which, you know, isn't a bad thing because that is truly the most inferior format of book, but also paperbacks. And those are the things that I'm unhauling because obviously the oldest things that I own are paperbacks. I remember in the UK when we didn't really have hardbacks, if you were getting a brand new fantasy release, it would be extremely rare for it to be in hardback. Pretty much everything was released straight into paperback, and obviously now times have changed. I have so many hardbacks and I just don't have the space for them. I think actually something that I need to consider doing at some point is potentially replacing some of these series that I own that I've enjoyed but I don't necessarily need hardbacks of into paperback and mixing up my collection like this, because I think what we're going to find is that like these shelves are going to get emptier and emptier. I've even put in some places small hardbacks on the paperback shelves to fill the gaps that I can't find paperbacks to fill. And now I've got spaces for small hardbacks and no small hardbacks to put in there either. So what I've done, as you can see, this is the huge gap that I've created. I unhauled all of the Karen Miller books, the Marissa Meyer arc, and the Short Second Life of Brie Tanner, all from the same space. So I've pulled every paperback from the stacks that isn't that is a romance. Okay, well, we have even less paperbacks. We've got 3 paperbacks that are eligible to go on these shelves because obviously the romances go upstairs and I do actually need to go up there and fill some gaps. And then I also have from the recently hauled books below me, I just have 2 paperbacks. So I actually don't think we're even going to be able to fill the gaps that we have. That's not a terrible thing though, because I have ordered the 3rd book in the Lycanius trilogy and also the 3rd book in the Of Blood and Bone series, which are both going to have to go into these shelves. I'm planning on reading both of them in the next month or 2. Once they've arrived, my order with those in still hasn't arrived and I ordered it 2 weeks ago, but that is a rant for a different time. So if we still have a couple of gaps, then that's absolutely fine, but we are going to have to do quite a bit of rearranging because a lot of these are at either the bottom of the alphabet or the top of the alphabet, but we do have one book that I should be able to slot on pretty easily, which we'll start off with. So this one is by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Webber, and I saw the Webber and was going to put it at the bottom, but Doyle comes first, so now I need to rearrange the top again. So the way that these ended up going in, they didn't even end up as gappy as I anticipated, given what I have and how I was able to rearrange. So I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get on the Lycanius trilogy book or A Time of Courage, but we'll see. That's a problem for another day. So for the gap that I've left in the car, I'm running really low on small hardbacks, which, as I said, is not a terrible thing aside from the fact that like I have this gap that I need to fill. So I picked this up from the extra stacks, the Devil Makes 3 by Tori Bovolino, and then I'm going to be shelving these 2 from the stacks, which is Romanov, which actually came from here originally, and The Chain. I normally wouldn't put non-fiction here, but needs must. It's fine. Hopefully these won't live on here for much longer anyway. I want to read them and get through them. So alphabetical order, Suleiman would go here. And a teeny tiny hardback with Bovolino. And then finally we have the romance shelves. So as you can see, there's like a big gap here, a little bit further down there's quite a big gap. So I'm just going to be trying to fill it in as best as possible. I've brought all of the romance from the stacks up. I would really like to take the 2 Ali Hazelwood books back down with me, because the reason why I've put these in the stacks is because I have quite a large Ali Hazelwood collection and I've only read about half of it, and I want to prioritize it because she's my favorite contemporary romance author. So I'm going to prioritize getting the paperbacks in. These 5 books came from our regular stacks, and this one I've recently added to the overspill to be filtered into the stacks at a later date. So priority is paperbacks, but we'll see what we can do. As we know, the alphabetization down here means absolutely nothing most of the time because it's just hard to get things in. I could move this up though, and then I would get, if it makes you happy, kind of alphabetical, LMNOP down there. I also have Laura Nowlin that should be around here somewhere. Oh, she might just slide right in next to If It Makes You Happy. She's a little bit of a taller paperback, which is a problem. Oh, oops, Holly Renee should have been down here. Let's start again. Okay, I think I'm just gonna have to move a few of the smaller paperbacks out of alphabetization for the sake of filling that gap. I can then move these guys again. I am just going to consider that a win for now, and I'm just going to take my 2 Ali Hazelwood books back downstairs and call it a day. I'm over 200 pages in now, and I am so happy to be telling you guys that I am loving Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. This feels like classic fantasy romance, which I think is interesting because that's not what I expected from a contemporary romance author. Now, going into the beginning of this, it reminded me a little bit of Fourth Wing in that we have a little bit more of a modern writing style. The characters swear in a almost like colloquial kind of way, whereas like the real classic fantasy romance that I'm talking about, it would have more of like a medieval fantasy writing style. And I feel like with the modernization and popularity of the romantasy genre, we have started to blend those fantastical elements with a little bit more of a contemporary writing style, especially in the dialogue. I will say that it's not too much, like it's not too much that it feels jarring having contemporary language in this fantastical world. It still seems very in keeping with this time period that we're trying to replicate, but the dialogue, the way people speak to each other, the joking does feel just like a tad more modern, but that very quickly faded into the background and became normal for this world and felt quite seamless and didn't stand out at all. This does remind me of The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen quite a bit, in that the way that the plot starts out, the catalyst for this plot is very similar. So this is a world where there's monsters, and every generation these big eagle monsters fly over the world and decimate the land. So because of that, there was a treaty created to keep peace between the lands so they could band together and fight off the monsters together to stand a better chance of survival. So the terms of this treaty is that the members of the royal family, like the princes and princesses, have to be married to other princes and princesses in the realms to keep the bonds between these kingdoms strong. And our main character is not supposed to be the princess that is chosen to fulfill this role. Her younger sister actually has been trained for this her entire life. Her younger sister is the daughter of the queen, and our main character is a daughter from a previous marriage of the king's. And this storyline in its catalyst kind of intersects with Fire and Blood, Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan for me, because they invite the royal family and like the monster hunters from this other kingdom to their shores, trying to initiate this marriage a little bit earlier. But on the way, this royal family from a different kingdom kill a bunch of monsters that the king of the kingdom that our main character is from has paid them to do. And because of a certain rule, like a stipulation in the ancient lore of this world, the newcomers are able to claim their own bride price because they've killed 7 female monsters, which theoretically should be enough to disrupt the reproductive cycle of these monsters and ease the tension and the violence that has been created by these monsters. So the king is outraged when this prince who's coming into the kingdom requests the elder daughter, our main character, as his bride price. So she is unprepared. She has kind of been swept to the wayside by her family. She hasn't been trained to fight like her sister has. She hasn't been prepared to leave her kingdom. And so when she's chosen as this bride price and the king can't find a way out of it, he tells her that her sister was actually prepared to enter this kingdom and report back to her father on how her father can infiltrate the kingdom for his own gain. So now our main character is tasked with that, very similar to The Bridge King by Danielle L. Jensen. And she goes into this kingdom kind of searching for information of how her father can invade. But this is a very secretive country. I think in the lore of this world, after their kingdom had been destroyed by these big eagle monsters, they built this like secret castle that nobody knows anything about, and our main character is just desperate to get there. So 200 pages in, like, we're still traveling, we're learning about the world, we're learning about this new place, but really we're not finding much information about this new kingdom. So we're really just learning about our main character in the world. She is inexplicably drawn to this man called the Guardian, who is the chief monster hunter of this other kingdom. Now, there is going to be a plot twist in this book. I think I already know what the plot twist is. It is not confirmed at this junction. I won't tell you what I think it is, but I do feel like it is quite obvious where this is going. I'm not mad about it. I love the banter between the main character and the Guardian. He is a kind of, obviously he's like a warrior, so he feels that kind of archetype. I always compare them to, like, is he more of a Rhysand or a Cassian? He's more of a Cassian. Like, he's a big, sarcastic, overbearing warrior type, and honestly, I'm a sucker for those, so it is a win for me. It is a writing style as well that's very familiar to the fantasy romance genre. It's reminiscent, like I said, of a lot of series that I've loved in the past, like The Bridge Kingdom. So I'm having a good time. I'm interested to see how this monster side of the story develops, because I do feel like our main character is a little different from the regular people of this world, because of course she's not like other girls. Everybody in this kingdom has a starburst in their eyes, which represents the kingdom that they're from, and both our main character and the Guardian are missing these, and it's something that the main character doesn't know why she doesn't have one. So I'm interested to see why that is, because obviously it is going to be relevant, and also what the general plot is past the fact that the main character's father is going to try and invade, because I feel like obviously we're going to have a secondary plot line with the monsters. Some ancient magic and law has already been hinted at within this world, with like the rule of 7 thing that the warriors did on the way there, which I think is going to be relevant. And I'm also wondering if this kingdom that our main character is traveling to is somewhere that is a little bit more steeped in the magic and the law. So I am in the end stretch of this book now, and by end stretch I mean I have just under 200 pages to go. So it's still going to take me a while, but I am loving every second of this book. It reminds me so much of older romantasy series that I love, and it is definitely, providing it sticks the landing, going to be one of my favorite romantasy books that has been released this year, which is exactly what we wanted when we were selecting the book for this prompt. So I'm glad that my intuition was right on this one. This is a world that is ravaged by monsters, which I think I did already talk to you guys about, but the way that they're described in here is pretty interesting. They're obviously modeled off real world animals. So an example is one of the most recent types of monster I've been introduced to is a Tarkin, which very closely resembles a tiger. The ones in the ocean that were mentioned right at the beginning, I think, are supposed to resemble giant eels. Then we have like the ones that migrate every generation and decimate the land. They're modeled off eagles. And I think that all of this is so that it's easier for us to visualize as readers, because they're like normal animals, but with slight modifications that are kind of, I want to say, reptilian. A lot of them have scales of some sort. And I think that the author was heavily inspired by The Witcher and the creatures of The Witcher when creating this novel. But to me, it reminds me a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn. And that is completely different because they are like robot dinosaurs. But I think that the way that they've been woven into this world and are present in this world, and they're a little bit different than what should be in this world because they have regular animals as well, reminds me of Horizon Zero Dawn, where you have these robot dinosaurs in something that appears to be a prehistoric world. And it's really weird, but the main character of the game, Aloy, she has always lived in this world, so she doesn't think that it's strange. But obviously, as somebody who knows how the world is supposed to be, it is a little bit odd. Now, I don't think we're going to be straying too far into the realms of sci-fi in this, but we do deal with a virus throughout this book, which forms a big part of the plot. And I feel like we are going to have some level of science coming into this novel or this series at some point, potentially in the form of alchemy, to tip it more into the world of the fantastical. But I'm definitely finding that it's an interesting world. I think that Devney Perry has done something that I wish all romantasy authors would do, and that is creating a story that has a lot of the features and the hallmarks of the genre that we love, but actually doing something different, not just the same thing in a different font. And that, I feel, is what this book is achieving. We have the slow burn, the yearning, the pining. We have a very common character archetype as our love interest. We have a princess who has been taken from her realm to seal a treaty into a forced marriage. All of these super super, super common themes in fantasy romance. Even the fact that she's supposed to be going there to assassinate the Guardian, to feed information back to her father, something we've seen before in the Bridge Kingdom. So we have all of these familiar tropes and themes that we enjoy that pull us into the story, but then we also have these monsters which add something just a little bit different to spice up a formula that we already know really works. And for that reason, I am captivated. I am touching upon that slow burn actually. That is something that I'm really loving about this. This is something that makes it really reminiscent to me of romantasy I was reading 5 years ago as opposed to what has been published more recently, because it's the kind of thing where nothing has really happened between them at all. They have maybe grazed hands a little bit, or they make eye contact, or they're just in the same room together and I'm getting butterflies. And that is a feeling that I've really missed. It's what I'm definitely lacking when I'm reading most modern romantasy, and why I feel like I've potentially kind of fallen out of love with the genre a little bit. And it's the reason why the Romantasy Rundown was born, which is a project I did earlier this year to figure out whether romantasy was just something I didn't enjoy anymore, or whether the issue was that I wasn't picking up the right things. And I'm glad every time that I pick up something like this that kind of reminds me that yes, actually, like I do still very much enjoy this genre. I just feel like this is gonna turn into a tangent that didn't even need to be in this video, but I just feel like when a genre becomes as popular as this has, you end up with authors who don't normally write in that genre, or who aren't typically skilled at that genre, publishing books within the genre for the sake of the popularity and the hype. Or you'll have, for example, like Law of the Wilds by Annalisa Brana, read like a young adult fantasy, and so the sex scenes in it felt really out of place and almost icky because they just really didn't feel like they belonged in there. And you have this like dissonance in the genre. So then I feel like we start to flood the genre with just any old book of the genre, and this applies to anything that's popular at the moment. Probably cozy fantasy is happening with as well. Paranormal back in the day, dystopian. People are writing just to get into the niche when they're not necessarily the most talented person to be writing that genre. Their strengths lie elsewhere, but obviously they're still getting published because the publishers are trying to fill this niche that everybody is loving so much right now. So I found a gem. I'm real happy about it. And you know what? I don't doubt that this is going to stick the landing. I do feel like the main character is going to make a poor decision though that's going to frustrate me. I am hoping against all hope that she does the thing that I don't expect her to do. But typically in these situations, they do the thing that I think she's going to do. And I feel like I know why she's going to do it as well. So I feel like it's going to play out quite predictably, but I'm hopeful that we take it in a different direction. Guys, we have 2 weeks left of 2025. And I would like to introduce you to my 7th 5-star read of the year. Oh yeah, this book was phenomenal. But what I don't mean when I say phenomenal is perfect. There were a couple of plot holes or conveniences in this that realistically, if we stop and think about it, they don't really work. For example, animal companions. We all love an animal companion, okay? But realistically, given the circumstances of this book, given this main character's upbringing, especially after what she's just gone through, would she make the some of the decisions that she made in this book? I'm not entirely sure. And then there's also a couple of ladies' maids in here who travel to this new land with our main character, and she is very close to them, or is trying to be very close to them and trying to become friends with them, because they obviously have not a shared interest as such, or not exactly shared trauma either, but they have the shared experience, shall we say, of having to very unexpectedly travel away from home into this new land where they don't know anything or anyone. And so our main character tries to befriend them, thinking that they're going to be sisters of solidarity against this new experience that they're forced to endure together, but they're not really like super forthcoming with any affection despite her best interests. And for the second half of this book, we completely forget that one of them exists. He's just not really mentioned, and they do end up being kind of relevant to the plot, so they do come back to the forefront. But yeah, she just completely forgot that she had a lady's maid there for a second. But I had an amazing time with this, because you know what is even better than a fantasy romance with epic sexual tension and a really good romance? One with a really good plot. This one has it all. It has both. And honestly, finding a book with both can be hard. That's the reason why a lot of the romantasy books I read that I really enjoy and that I recommend recommend are only 4-star reads because they have one or the other and they do one incredibly well, but they struggle with the other. But this, not only did it have that little bit of a slight twist on things that I'm familiar with the monsters being the dominant kind of foe that we're dealing with in here, but not just the fact that they're monsters, there's layers to this as well that you explore throughout the book. But this book just kept giving with the plot. We had plot reveals at the very end that I didn't expect. Like, I knew something was going on with the main character. I think that that's very obvious from the start of this book, but I had no idea what Devney Perry was hinting at and what direction she was taking this book in. And the more information that we discovered throughout this book about all of these various different elements that we had going on blew my mind. 10 out of 10, no notes. Well, there are notes, actually. There's notes on those handmaidens. But aside from that, I had an amazing time. I think that if you have similar taste in romantasy to me, this is definitely one that you need to be picking up and prioritizing. I'm so sad I didn't get the Waterstones edition of this as well. As you guys know, I haven't really been buying books this year. The majority of the books that I've hauled have been from the subscription boxes that I rep for, or pre-orders by authors that I already know that I love, or upcoming sequels I'm excited about, and then stuff from publishers, but I haven't been buying books on a whim. The Waterstones edition of this was gorgeous, so I'm going to try and pick one up on Vinted just to swap it out. They are expensive though, because everyone wants them expectedly. Like, this was a really good book and it's a really gorgeous edition, but I truly was not expecting. I mean, obviously I went into this expecting that I was going to enjoy it, but I'm always hesitant to take recommendations because, especially when it comes to something within the romance genre, romance reviews are extremely subjective. So what some people find amazing and like the best romantic relationship they've ever read can be something that completely turns somebody else off. So I'm glad that this one came through for me. I was definitely expecting to enjoy this to some degree, but 5 stars, man, as you can tell, I mean, this is my 7th of the year. They are few and far between. I need to look up the release date because I'm actually going to pre-order the sequel to this one. I've already edited my anticipated releases as well, and since I've made that video, I have added, I think, 3 books. This will be the 4th book that I'm adding to my anticipated releases. It's the 7th of April, so actually not too long to wait, and I reckon I can get away with not having to reread this to go into the sequel. I should be able to retain all of the information that I need to. Oh my god, The Guardian is going to live in my mind rent free. You know what, actually, I think 2025 has been a very solid year for romantasy for me. If you missed it, by the time this video goes up, I should have posted the best romantasy books of 2025, which is why I needed to get an extra recommendation under my belt to make that video. So do be sure to check that one out, because I obviously don't know exactly what my favorite books of the year are going to be yet, because I don't have enough 5 stars to make a top 10, but I will be adding 4 stars in there. But I'm pretty sure right now that my top 3 are all fantasy romance, and I feel like I'd have to go back and check to be certain, but I'm pretty sure that the last couple of years fantasy romance has been pretty thin on the ground for me, like fantasy romance that I've really loved. So as you probably guessed by now, I am 100% going to be shelving this one. I am concerned though, because she is a little bit thick. I have done something a little bit sneaky though. If you remember the unhaul portion of this video, I unhauled a singular hardback, which was a duplicate edition of Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, and I purposefully did not fill that gap, anticipating that I may need to shelve this, because obviously I went into it expecting to enjoy it. I know that if I need to shelve it on these ones behind me, which is where I've been shelving the majority of my hardbacks, there's going to be a problem because of where it's going to be situated, but I don't know for sure that this is going to fit in the gap that Daughter of Smoke and Bone left, because Daughter of Smoke and Bone is like half the size. So we are going to go and see, but if I do end up having to read a book from down there, there's not many that I haven't read, and a lot of books by my favorite authors are down there, so the options are going to be bangers. In terms of Clearursht, the prompt that we're going to be looking for is a book with a blue cover. So I feel like obviously that's a really easy one. It's definitely one that I can work with. So we're going to go see if we can shelve this. If we can't, we have options. And if we can, we'll get a blue book from the stacks. Okay, so we're down here on the floor. We don't come here very often because the majority of books we have here, I have actually already read. But as you can see, we do have a little bit of a gap over here where I took out Daughter of Smoke and Bone. Now that looks like a substantial gap, but it also looks like one that may be a little bit too tight. So alphabetically, it would go here. I don't think we're gonna do it, guys. I think it's gonna be a little bit too small. Yeah, we are not we're not going to get in there now. The reason why this becomes tricky is because there are books on this shelf that I've been avoiding for a very long time. I think I'm going to love them. Am I mentally prepared to read another book that could be a 4 or a 5-star read right now? We're looking for blue books. I don't remember what colour this is. It's purple. Yeah, that one's definitely purple. It's Dreams of Gods and Monsters. That's blue. Okay. Which means that if I were to have to read a book on this shelf, I'm pretty sure that it would have to be Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I think I'm going to love this, but I also think it's just going to be another shelf and then we'll just be in exactly the same position. Do I do it anyway? I think I actually might go and see if I can get this on the other hardback shelves and then take whatever I have to off those shelves and try and fit it into that gap. Once again, do not know if that's going to work. So somewhere else we don't visit very often is the lower shelves of these bookcases. So alphabetically, this is really inconvenient, and this is why I didn't want to shelve this over here, because Shield of Sparrows would have to go here. And obviously we don't have space for that. I've read all of these, obviously. I've read This Woven Kingdom, I've read Heartless, the Margaret Owen duology, but I haven't read Little Thieves, and I haven't read Sons of Darkness or The Forest Grimm. Now, none of those books are blue. So what I might be able to do is take off, I still don't think this gap is going to be big enough. Let me take out one of these because they're easier to grip onto. So if I take out Sons of Darkness, this is a broken binding edition. Absolutely gorgeous. The Merciful Crowback. Shield of Sparrows would have to go here in between Margaret Owen books and The Witcher. Moment of truth, I still don't think it's going to happen. No, it's not going to happen. So then if we look at the shelves down here, if we were to move something along, is this blue? I don't think there's enough blue on this for it to be considered blue. I just don't want to read Ninth House. I think I'm going to love it. I cannot stress that enough. But I've put that book off for so long as like a 5-star prediction that I don't feel emotionally prepared to read Ninth House right now. It would be a really good time though, because I think there's something like vaguely in the back of my mind that's telling me that there was some sort of title or release date announced for book 3. Oh, and I could read book 2 for the next prompt. Guys, I think we might have to do it. I think we might have to read Ninth House. I think that's my only option right now. This is insane. I'm speechless, honestly. I can't believe with 2 weeks left of 2025, I'm going to be tackling Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I love Leigh Bardugo, guys. I read the Grisha trilogy probably in like 2015. It was one of the first proper fantasy series that I ever read. I loved it. I'm a massive Nikolai stan and I always will be. That being said, the last thing that I read from Leigh Bardugo was King of Scars, and I didn't end up reading Rule of Wolves because I didn't really like King of Scars, but I love the Grisha trilogy. I gave at least one book in the Six of Crows series 5 stars. I love Leigh Bardugo's writing. I love the concept of this book because I've literally discussed it in this video. One of my favorite types of fantasy is contemporary fantasy that has an element of like witchcraft or the occult. And this is also Leigh Bardugo's first adult book, which I was also very excited about. And I started this when it was released, which I'm pretty sure was in 2019. I read 50 pages and then with whatever else I had to read on my TBR, I couldn't prioritize it and I put it down and I never came back to it. I wasn't not enjoying it or anything. I literally just did not have the time to read this alongside whatever else I was reading. So this has languished on my shelf ever since. I hope I love it, but at this point there's also the expectation of loving it that's putting me off because I don't want it to disappoint me in any way either. So if you guys don't know what this is about, it follows Alex Stern, who is invited to attend, I think it's Yale. Yes, I always get confused whether it's Yale or Harvard, but she gets invited to attend Yale, which is a bit of a surprise to her because she is a dropout, a bit of a delinquent. I'm pretty sure the police have visited her a couple of times. And the reason why she's sent there is to join the Ninth House at Yale, which is the Ninth Secret Society. And the job of the Ninth House is to police the other secret societies who are all somehow involved in the occult. I'm assuming that she has some sort of power that equips her to deal with this, but like there's nothing about this that sounds bad. I would be very surprised if this doesn't go well for me, but I'm also really scared saying that because what if this does go wrong for me? What if we have more than one 5-star in this video? I'm getting way too excited, guys. I have to go to bed, but I will let you guys know how it's going when I make it like 25% of the way through this book. So I am very surprised to say that I am not loving Ninth House right now. I'm 150 pages into it. I think the chapters are quite long in this. I also wanted to show you guys, I have my old bookmarking still where I put it down the first time at page 48. I'm up to chapter 9, which is page 146. And I don't know why I'm not vibing with this yet. I mean, Stephen King said it's impossible to put down, and I wholeheartedly disagree at this point. It's really hard to continue on, and I think that is because this leans a little bit more into the academia aspect of things than I expected it to do. Now, obviously, there's a reason why we're excited that this is set at Yale. Like, I love that college setting, especially when we're talking about something like secret societies, or in the past, I've read it with like sororities and fraternities and this element of the occult. Like, I think that that's a really good combination. But I think that this delves really deeply into the histories of each of the societies, and I feel like the way that they are being introduced is a little bit info dumpy, so it's taken a long time for me to feel like I'm getting into it, because I feel like I'm just being presented with reams and reams of information constantly. But to give you guys a little bit of an idea of the plot on this one, we're following Alex Stern, who does indeed have a special ability, which is why she's been recruited by Yale to join this 9th secret society, Leith, and that is that she sees ghosts. Now, it's not normal for people to be able to see ghosts, because the other main contact that she has within the society, Darlington, has to take some sort of like magical elixir that has the potential to kill him every time he takes it, just to be able to see these ghosts in black and white. But our main character can see them in colour all of the time, and this is something that has plagued her entire life. Now, content 1 is in here for sexual assault. There is a very graphic scene of sexual assault within this book, which I forgot about. It was talked about a lot when this book was released, but obviously it's been a while now and I'd forgotten about that particular element. But just to let you guys know, that is in here. It is fully on page, and it does also happen to a child. But the interaction that Alex has had with ghosts have controlled her entire life. They forced her down a path of drug abuse to try and escape from these specters that she constantly sees, and she is approached when she is in hospital after an accident, something kills her friend, and she is approached by somebody who wants to recruit her into Yale, who has been following her for a couple of years, knows that she has this ability and thinks that she will be a perfect fit for the House of Leith, even though she doesn't have any education. She didn't even finish high school, and part of her role in this 9th house will be that she will also have to be a student at Yale. So she is considering this to be a fresh start and a second chance, but the duties that she has for the House of Leith and also her academic responsibilities are taking a little bit of a toll on her. And as well as that, the mentor that she has within Leith, Darlington, has gone missing, and we don't know where he is. We don't know whether he left, whether he was taken, whether he's alive or he's dead. But we do flash back in here between two timelines. The current one, where Alex is investigating the murder of a young woman, that really resonates with her because it reminds her of the death of her friend and some of her background and her history. And also it says last fall. So, last fall has to be the fall that's just gone, I think, because she's only just arrived in Yale, but we're also in the fall following her introduction into Leith and Darlington onboarding her into this society, and all of that stuff is from Darlington's perspective. So I think right now it is just a little bit heavier on the world building than I necessarily expected it to be, and it is slow going in terms of getting into the story. Like 150 pages in, and we're dancing around the fact that Darlington is gone. Like I said, I don't know the circumstances of his disappearance. I know the date of the last time he was seen, but I don't know where he was seen or who it was who saw him. And while we are progressing on with this murder case and the investigation of it, part of that doesn't really make any sense, because I understand why Alex wants to investigate, because of how it ties to her past and the death of her friend in the similar circumstances and the background of the woman that was murdered. But aside from that, like, as far as I'm concerned, she has no reason to believe that this is tied to the secret societies, but she is pursuing it anyway. I do really like the discussions of privilege in here and how it implies that the reason why so many influential people come from universities like Yale is because they're actually all dealing in some elements of the occult and like performing rituals to make them more prosperous and successful and to inspire them. And I think that it's especially highlighted because we're balancing that with the perspective of a character without privilege, and we also see that balance directly in the narrative with Darlington, who comes from a very rich family and a lot of privilege, and Alex, who's had a really rough time. She was never affluent to begin with. Like, her family didn't have any money. She grew up with a single mother, but then her life very sharply took a turn that led her into this path of like addiction, which caused her to have like a further disadvantage in society. So having somebody like Alex now attending Yale amongst all of these people who have had a little bit of a leg up in life or are going to go on to achieve a future that's maybe better and brighter than they should because of their magical dealings, I'm finding really interesting. So I got 125 pages left of Ninth House, and I am still not loving it. I am enjoying it more than the last time I checked in with you guys though, and I think one of the reasons why I'm not loving this in a way that I expected to is because it skews a little bit more paranormal detective than I anticipated. I knew that this was a paranormal story going into it. Obviously we have different degrees of paranormal. We have books that don't fit into the typical conventions of the paranormal genre but contain paranormal creatures. We have books that have paranormal creatures that stray on more of a fantastical side than a like supernatural side. We have paranormal romance, which has its own kind of like things and hallmarks going on. And we also have the paranormal detective genre, which is something that we see in like the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, which actually I included those books recently in my entire own TBR because I want to reread them, and a ton of people said that they think I'm going to hate them, which I'm not saying you're wrong because it's been a long time, but I actually read like half, well not half because it's still being published, but like 8 books in that series when I was like 14. And I enjoyed them then. But yeah, I know there's a lot of sexism in that series, but essentially following a person who has a particular magical, supernatural, paranormal skill set that allows them to solve murders. It's also the formula that we have in like the Angel TV show, which is the spin-off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I didn't love in comparison to Buffy because we have that mix of like a crime drama, something like CSI or Law and Order, with something supernatural like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. As somebody who doesn't read crime and doesn't enjoy the crime genre, it's not something that I like to see mixed into my books, but I do really like that you can see the bones of that genre in this, and it's like a modern iteration of a genre that was very, very popular a couple of decades ago, which reminds me a lot of like Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair, which does the same thing with the like romantic urban fantasy genre, things like Alona Andrews, the Kit Daniels series, like that kind of stuff. So I'm finding that interesting from a, I guess, objective perspective. Although something positive I can say about this with 100% conviction is that I feel like Leigh Bardugo is one of the authors that I feel like has truly transitioned from young adult to adult with a marked difference in those two different types of books that she has written. So we have a lot of authors now that were very popular in the young adult space that are now being published as adults. They're publishing books that are like their first adult novels, but actually what has happened is that the people who are reading books are still, well, not all books, but a lot of people who are still buying books, still reading books, are the same people that were eating up all of that YA fantasy. So those authors are just transitioning and delivering to the same audience. So it's the same style of book, but maybe, I've said it before, it has more swearing, it has more sex in, but at its core, it still reads like a young adult fantasy. Like, it doesn't have the level of sophistication that I expect from adult literature. The same cannot be said of Leigh Bardugo. I do feel like this is definitely a step up from her young adult work. I think I expected this to skew more on the fantastical, maybe whimsical side of paranormal because I'm so familiar with Leigh Bardugo's young adult work, but this has a level of grittiness and a level of bleakness in it, which I think, it's not that I don't like stories like that, I do just think it is a little bit more grim than I wanted it to be. Like, I like stories with this occult twist that have a little bit of campiness in them that remind me of horror movies like The Craft, like that kind of teenage slasher horror film. And this really takes the darker topics that it deals with quite seriously. Like I said, there is a scene of sexual assault in here that is incredibly graphic, but then we have a lot of scenes and references to sexual abuse, especially involving minors, throughout this book. And that is something that has been common throughout all of Leigh Bardugo's books that I've read. And obviously I know nothing about them as a person, but I have noticed that sexual assault plays a part in every single series, every single world that I have read from Leigh Bardugo. And I feel like the way that is depicted in this book so graphically, but also with this like stark, bleak honesty, really sets the tone for this book in a way that feels quite gritty and raw. So now that I don't have too much of this book left, I feel like the pieces are starting to come together a little bit more, and that's potentially why I'm a little bit more into it. I feel like we've moved away from more of the world building aspects. I don't think this is the story that I expected it to be, and I think that it represents some genres that I'm not particularly a fan of. This could have a killer ending and I could end up falling in love with it, but at the minute I am feeling quite conflicted about what I'm going to be doing about this book, because I do still really like Leigh Bardugo's writing, and I feel like the reason why I'm persevering with this, even though there's things that I'm not finding particularly engaging, is because I like Leigh Bardugo's writing and I want to give her the benefit of the doubt. But I feel like this is going to be one of those really conflicting books for me, where I liked and disliked it in equal measure, which means it's going to be quite difficult when it comes to me making a decision of what we're going to be doing. So I finished Ninth House, and I'm really sad to say that I gave it 3 stars. This is now one of my lowest rated Leigh Bardugo books, along with King of Scars, and I'm really sad about it because obviously I was so excited to go into this one. It was kind of like a low-key 5-star prediction from me, and I also was really warming up to it in our last update, but I really did not like how this book ended. I think that Leigh Bardugo potentially took on a little bit too much with this one. Now, I remember when this book was announced that it was supposed to be a 9-book series, which, having read it and seeing how similar it is to like paranormal detective series, that makes a lot of sense to me why it would have been a longer series, but I can't remember why. But it was cut down into a trilogy, and I feel like if this would have been like 2 shorter books or 1.5 shorter books, it would have been executed a little bit better, because we just have a lot of plot elements going on in here, and the dominant one that we're dealing with is the murder of this girl that Alex is investigating and how that is potentially tied to the societies. We also have the mystery of Darlington, like, where is he gone? What's happened? Is he coming back? We also have the mystery of Alex's past, like her friend died, her boyfriend died, she's fine, what happened there? And then because she can talk to ghosts, there's a part in this book where she's asked to do something for a ghost in exchange for a favor. So we also have that mystery running alongside, and I think that this would have been better if we'd have left it where we tied up the main mystery, like the mystery of what happened to this girl that was murdered. But instead this book went on for an extra 50 pages. It threw in 2 random villain monologues in there from villains who just emerged from the woodwork in the 11th hour, and it wrapped up another one of those plot points, which honestly I understand the need to wrap them up, because obviously we'd be here like, oh, this was unresolved, there were things going on that were never explained, but they could have been brought to like a semi-close and then fully explored in book 2, and I think that would have been my preference, because to add a little bit on or seemingly just tack a little bit on the end to deal with this and have all this extra stuff come into play was just a little bit overkill for me. The last villain monologue we got kind of just tipped me over the edge. I was like, this one's just too much. I feel like one of the reasons why I struggled with this so much is because when it comes to mysteries for me, and I don't like to read mysteries, it's not one of my favorite genres. I like a thriller, but a solid mystery, it's not something I would ever reach for. But when there is a mystery element in a plot, I like to be involved in that. I like to be able to solve the mystery myself. I like the chance to puzzle out what might be going on there. And this was not that kind of story. There wasn't really very much foreshadowing. There wasn't too much opportunity in here for me to figure out the mystery for myself. It was very much Alex investigating, asking questions, and as she is receiving a new piece of the puzzle, she's kind of immediately unlocking like a new element that she didn't think of before. So it's more about following her on her journey to solving this mystery than having any opportunity to solve it for myself. So that means that when we have these extra villains popping up, and there were a few of them, like every 100 or so pages, it's like, oh no, it's actually this guy who's responsible. Nope, it's actually this guy who's responsible. While they all obviously had a plausible reason for potentially being the person responsible, they weren't really doing anything for the rest of the book that made you, like, everyone had the equal opportunity to be the bad guy in this. So whenever a new one was revealed, it's like, okay, yeah, it could have been him, but it also could have literally been anyone else. And I feel like Leigh Bardugo really took that opportunity for it always to be literally anybody else. That being said, I did like the writing for the most part, even though I didn't love the execution of the plot. The writing style in this, and I think one of the reasons why the atmosphere and tone was different than I expected, is because I feel like we have quite a clinical, matter-of-fact outlook from our main character Alex, especially because she's had a pretty hard, not upbringing necessarily, but her past has not been especially pleasant. And the way that she views these things and these really shocking things is actually with a cold, kind of matter-of-fact attitude towards them, which was just different than I expected from a Leigh Bardugo book. But what I did really enjoy about this is the discussions of privilege and how people in power are always preying on those weaker than them, and that it's always the poor and the underprivileged that pay the price for the mistakes of those with more power and wealth than them, and the various ways that that was illustrated throughout this book. I think that it wasn't subtle. It was very clear that we were talking about the difference in power dynamics, and people who come from a less privileged background, people of colour, always seem to fall through the crack, and it's very easy for people in power to abuse this. But I feel like it was delivered in a way where the point was always relevant and always underpinned, but Leigh Bardugo wasn't like kind of holding your hand and hammering that into you. So I did really like that element of it, I'll be honest. And right now I'm conflicted what to do about this book. I kind of don't want to DNF the series. My original plan was to read Hellbent directly after Ninth House, because the next prompt that I need to figure out for Clearursht is a book with an ugly cover. And I understand now, actually, that I've read Ninth House, why that cover is so fitting for this series, but damn do I hate that ugly shriveled rabbit on the cover of that book. However, I'm obviously not as enthusiastic to pick that up, having not given Ninth House the glowing review that I expected to. And I actually genuinely think that it would be a little bit too heavy to go into Hellbent off the back of this, given how much more gritty this book was than I expected. So I don't feel like it's going to be sunshine and rainbows going into the sequel. I do think I'm going to continue with this one though, because I want to see kind of how it develops. I did ask my patrons, based on their experience of reading both of them, did they think that Hellbent was a better installment or about the same, and everyone who replied to me said they'd actually rated it lower. And I do feel like I am giving Leigh Bardugo the benefit of the doubt here, because I've loved so many books from her before. I had such high expectations for this series that I'm kind of not willing to let it go. So the problem that we now have, I've been staring at that shelf down there every single day I've been reading this book, and there's nothing that we can do about that shelf aside from to find another home for Shield of Sparrows. So I'm going to go back over to the big hardback shelves that are built into the alcove, and we are going to just kind of rearrange stuff until we make it work and figure it out, because that is the only option available to me right now, unless I put Shield of Sparrows upstairs, which I could, but I kind of want to get all of the unread books or books that aren't attached to series off these shelves, and there's got to be a way I can do it if I just Tetris hard enough. Okay, here we are again, take two. I feel like we can really do it this time. I've been thinking about it a lot. I need a book that is just, I'm pretty sure it just has to be smaller than Shield of Sparrows to put on the shelves over there with like Ninth House. So like I said, the majority of the books over there are books that I've already read by authors that I enjoy, and I feel like straight up we have one of those here, and that is Heartless by Marissa Meyer, that in the past has come from that shelf. Like, it lived there for a long time. I can't remember why exactly it was that I changed it around, but if we take that off, obviously still don't have enough room, but we are also looking for a book for me to read right now, and I haven't read Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. I do expect that I'm gonna like this, and I actually think what I'm looking for right now is a book that I have no expectations of after being disappointed by Ninth House. So this one, because I've read The Merciful Crow duology and I've heard good things about this, I think it's going to be a win for me, but I don't want to be let down. I am also looking for a book with an ugly cover, but I do also have a free space coming up, so if it's not an ugly cover, then I can cope. I don't love the cover of this book, if I'm being honest. This is The Forest Grimm by Catherine Purdy, and I really like the sprayed edge on it. It's a Fairy Loot edition, I think. It is indeed, but the cover itself is just, it's not ugly by any means, but it's not one that I feel especially drawn to. That's definitely an option. If we were to maybe move some stuff around, which we have no, oh no, we would have space to, because I do also have down here If I Have to Be Haunted by Miranda Sun. I feel like I should like this, but I'm pretty sure when I unboxed it, I did say there's just something about it that doesn't gel with me. Once again, not an ugly cover by any means, it's a special edition, but also not one that particularly appeals to me. And this is once again a young adult fairy loot book, and these two actually ran back to back. This is September 23, this is October 23. In terms of these two, I think I prefer this cover to this one. And I have read The Bonecryer's Moon by Catherine Purdy, which was a book that I was really excited about, a romancy that I thought I would really enjoy, and it fell a little bit flat for me. So this, I feel like, is one that I kind of want to try out, but I have no real motivation to do so. So we'll put this one back for now. And see, now I have an enormous gap that I don't need. This is the curse. Oh wait, no I don't. I need to put Little Thieves back. And then alphabetically, Shield of Sparrows, slots right in there. Sorted. Now before I commit to the Forest Grim, I just want to have a quick look at the bags that I've got down here to see if we have any better contenders, because these are the ones that get forgotten about all the time. So of these ones, I like that cover. Let's put that one back. What about my other bag? Okay, so I don't love the cover of And Break the Pretty Things by Lena Jiang. I also haven't really heard anybody talk about this. Hammerjang Look is a book. When I unboxed this was an Illumicrate book, I think. I don't think I'm gonna love this. It's a sci-fi, but it feels like it's gonna be too fast-paced and plot-driven for me. It feels like a similar book to something like Illuminae, like a big cast space opera with lots of hijinks, but I actually kind of like the cover, and I don't like the cover of The Courting of Bristol Keats. I think it's the pastelness of it that puts me off a little bit, but I do actually want to finish the, what's the series called? Like the Kiss of Deception series that I started earlier this year. I want to finish that. What is that series called? The Remnant Chronicles. I want to finish the Remnant Chronicles before I dive into anything else from Mary E. Pearson. And A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. I don't think is going to be for me because I think it's like Victorian, which is not a time period I enjoy reading from. Oh, it's 1923, so that's post-Victorian, I think. Still not a time period I love. It's set in London, I think, but I actually really, really like this edition. So not a contender for the prompt. So with that in mind, I feel like we are solidly going to be going with The Forest Grim by Catherine Purdy. So I really hope these books fit now that we've gone to all of that effort. But Heartless will go here, and then Ninth House will slot in there. And then if you guys don't know, because I was just saying how much I dislike this cover, if you guys don't know what it looks like, this is the cover of Hellbent. The rabbit just really disturbs me, which it's supposed to, but obviously not a fan of how this looks. So I'm currently doing sprints on my Patreon. We have 30 minutes left of the final sprint because we are going on for midnight, but I was determined to get some solid pages in today. And the Forest Grim, I actually have no recollection of what this is about. So it looks like it has friends to lovers romance in here, and it says once upon a time villagers would whisper their desires to the Book of Fortunes and its pages would reveal how to obtain them. So one day somebody used this book for evil and it backfired in a way that cursed the whole village, and the main character's grandmother is a fortune teller and she warns her that this is a terrible idea, but the main character is determined to go out into the forest to find the Book of Fortunes to reverse the curse and save the village, and her childhood friend goes along with her. So it sounds very fairy tale-esque. Obviously it starts with once upon a time, so I definitely feel like that is the vibe that this book is going for, which always intrigues me. I always want to enjoy a fairy tale-esque story, but then I feel like in practice it doesn't always work out that way for me. Oh, I really love the like inside dust jacket stuff we have going on here. The naked hardcover is my favorite, and I also like the art style on the end pages. So even though the cover art is not blowing me away, I think it's because this might actually just be like a variation of the normal cover. The extras that we have going on in this edition are quite pretty. So this is an incredibly quick and an incredibly easy read. I flew through the first 60 pages of this in absolutely no time at all. We are following a girl who lives in this village, and the curse that falls upon the forest actually happens in her lifetime. They have this book and they can make a request of it, for example for clear skin or for wealth, and the book will deliver. However, if you disclose how you've attained these boons, the forest and the book will then also take them away from you, which seems kind of counterproductive to me, because it's like if you suddenly become very wealthy and successful and people know this book exists in this society, which everybody does, it's a rite of passage when you turn 16 to be able to grant something from this book, then I feel like it's pretty obvious to everyone around you the way that you have obtained this. But whatever, when you tell somebody about it, the book then kind of flips it on its head. So for example, there's a girl in here who did ask for clear skin, and then she told people how she got clear skin, and she was cursed with these pox that like left her with facial scarring. But our main character's grandmother is a tarot reader, and one of the futures that her grandmother has foretold is that she's going to die an untimely death, and she's very upset about this, and she really wants her her grandmother to give her like the red card of fate, which means that she'll be able to change her fate in the future. So her mother obviously sees that she's quite upset that she's going to die suddenly, and she pulls her aside and she's like, look, I have the same fate as you. This is also what's been foretold for me. So the main character from a very young age vows to stop her mother from dying and to potentially give her own life in exchange for her mother's. So when somebody asks the book to help them murder somebody, the forest spirits the book away, and from that moment on, nobody from this village is allowed to enter into the forest. It will bar them, like physically stop them from entering, and every month they pull names out of a hat to allow people the opportunity to travel into the forest to find all the people that have now been lost there, because if you are granted entry, then the forest will stop you from returning, or it will obviously like close its path, and anybody who returns with the book will reverse the curse. However, of course, this has never happened, and at this point, 7 years after this beginning bit where we find out about our main character's fate, she is desperate to head into this forest to save her mother, who went in there looking for the main character's father, who unfortunately died. So she has been biding her time, trying to get her grandmother to change her fate, but also looking for the opportunity to enter into this forest, which eventually is granted to her, but not through the usual method. So as I said, I'm only 60 pages into this one, but I do think that I'm going to be putting this down because this screams 2 or 3 star read to me, and I am not really in the mood for that right now. Like I said, it's very quick, it's very easy, it's taken absolutely no effort on my part to get through this, but I do very much when I'm reading it feel like I'm reading for reading's sake. Like it's not really giving me anything back, and the writing style I'm finding in here is very over-explanatory. It is leaving nothing to the imagination. We are being told exactly what the main character is thinking, like everything is being laid out so clearly, and every thought that the main character have is not only being laid out to us, but it is them being delved into. Well, I feel like this and I feel like this way because, and the reason why is because this thing happened in the history, and it's also getting repetitive in that way. Like I've had this tarot spread explained to me, I think 4 times in the first 60 pages of what each individual card means, and it's been broken down, like in the prologue it's broken down, this is her fortune, this is what these cards mean, and then she spends the next like 40 pages thinking about the card and how desperate she is for like this new fate, and being like, this card also, my mother had it, it means that we're gonna die. And then she has a tarot reading performed for her friend. She tricks her grandmother into thinking that she's performing it for the main character's friend, because the grandmother said like, look, we're not changing your fate, I'm not going to be reading the cards for you anymore. And once again she gets the same cards with a little bit extra this time, and it once again explains, broken down, what every card means. So I'm truly just not feeling like I'm mentally engaging with this in any way. It is a very passive read for me, which, you know, sometimes that's not terrible, but because I think everything's being laid out so clearly, there's no part of me that's kind of curious as to what's happening next. And I feel like this is once again, almost a very passive book where it's not relying on the reader to be particularly intrigued or think too hard about anything that's going on. And really, that's what I just complained about a little bit with Ninth House, how I felt like everything was kind of being handed to us at the right time for it to be handed to us, for us to add a little bit onto this puzzle. The only mystery we have in this is kind of like what's happening to the lost ones when they go into the forest. But I have no doubt that our main character is going to be granted access into this forest. She's going to journey in there, and we're going to go into like a fairy tale-esque quest-based kind of story with maybe some characters from the original fairy tales popping up here and there. And that is not the kind of thing that I'm particularly wanting to read right now. So I'm going to be DNFing this one, unfortunately, and I'm going to be scrapping it. It is a duology as well, so I do just feel like, for me personally, I would be wasting my time persevering with this one, because at the minute it's giving me nothing to pull me through this first book, let alone be intrigued enough to pick up a sequel. So that means that we're going to be heading back to the stacks. Yay, it's been a while. And for Clear Your Shit, I'm pretty sure that you can count DNF, so the prompts, because the purpose of the readathon is to clear through your TBR, not to make it very difficult for you to achieve the prompts in any way. They're quite easy prompts to fulfill, and they're supposed to be. So I could count this for a book with an ugly cover, even though, like I said, it's not like it's ugly, it's just I have much nicer editions than this one. But I think what I'm actually going to do, because I know that I'm not going to finish the readathon, I've never finished the readathon, and that's not why I participated participate. I participate so that it prompts me towards books that I typically wouldn't necessarily think about picking up. So I'm just gonna maybe repeat the prompt again. We're gonna go into the stacks and we're gonna see if we can find a book with a cover that I don't love. It is gonna be hard though, especially because of how much we've shelved during this episode already. We've shelved a lot of like really old paperbacks or books that I've had for a very long time. And so, I mean, from what I can see of the stacks from where I'm sat right now, it's just a whole ton of special editions, but we'll see what we can uncover. So the first thing I'm noticing here just at a glance is that, like I said, pretty much everything is a special edition. We have a few standard editions in here. I mean, I'm not particularly attached to the covers of any of LJ Andrews' books, but I do think that this series looks a lot nicer than the regular editions of like Broken Souls and Bones, which I really don't like the covers of. We also have The Listeners. That's not a horrific cover. That is just a standard edition though. The Paris Apartment standard edition, nothing particularly exciting about it. The same with Sign Here by Claudia Lux. The Valkyrie by Kate Hartfield. This one is a Goldsboro edition, but just with the regular cover. And I mean, it's pretty enough, I guess, but it is screaming like historical fiction to me. This is not a book that I would pick up if I walked past it on the shelves. And this one, I think, is a Norse fantasy, so I understand why they've gone with those vibes in the cover. We also down here have Lady Hotspur. That is standard edition, very average cover. Seven Devils, I don't know if you can quite see it right on the bottom, by Elizabeth May and Laura Lamb. Actually don't really like the cover of that, it's giving nothing. And then on this side, This Vicious Grace by Emily Thaidi is giving the same vibes to me as the Valkyrie, so not a massive fan, but this one is a bit of a nice addition. And then The Last Hour Between Worlds, that cover's nice enough, you know. And then we also have here actually Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. This one is an Illumicrate edition, but I never liked the cover of this, and they also didn't really change anything as far as I'm aware from the regular edition. I think I remember it being a very subtle change that you can hardly notice. Like, I don't know if you can tell there's tigers in the background here, which I think is part of the uniqueness of this one, but it ain't given very much. So in terms of what I'm looking for, this is hopefully going to be the last book that we read for this. So even though I wanted to read a ton of sequels for this vlog, I think I'm going to stray away from the Everqueen. I don't know if I'm in the mood for something that's like heavily historical, although I don't know if I'm going to like this. I haven't heard the best things, but I love the other Kate Hartfield book that I've read. We could go for a thriller. That would be quite an appealing one. Or like Sign Here, which has satirical, maybe horror-esque vibes. I think actually though, I'm kind of feeling Portrait of a Thief. I think that this has a little bit of a thriller element to it, and it's one that has sat on my shelves for a very long time and has intrigued me, but I never kind of find a reason to pick it up. So today, I haven't heard the best things about this, if I'm being honest, but I think it would be a nice one that will be compelling enough for me to want to finish it, but maybe nothing that blows me away. So I feel like the pacing in this one is going to be relatively quick as well, because I think it's some sort of heist story. I don't think I would call this a thriller, but I do think it also has some element of suspense in here as well, which I think would definitely be good off the back of Ninth House. Okay, this is like maybe a little bit more Ninth House adjacent than I realized or remembered, because this is actually set at Harvard. I knew that this was an art heist where the main characters were going to be trying to steal back art and museum exhibits that were the victims of colonialism back in the day, like taken from other countries as the spoils of war. They're now displayed in galleries, in museums, and the main character is taking it upon himself to steal those back. But he is actually a senior at Harvard. But somebody from a shadowy corporation reaches out to him to lead a team in a heist to steal back 5 priceless Chinese sculptures. So every kind of review I've heard of this one has been very mediocre, which has put this on a little bit of a back burner for me. Based on the synopsis and the fact that I'm expecting this to be a little bit of a pacier book just by the nature of the synopsis, it has intrigued me for a while. But I feel like one of the reasons why I haven't immediately reached for it is because everybody I know who's read it has came out a little bit underwhelmed. As this is an Illumicrate book, I'm assuming it has some sort of fantasy or sci-fi element, but it doesn't say anything about that in the synopsis. It literally just says it's a heist. I'm expecting this to deal into the topics of colonialism and also identity, cultural identity, because it does say that each member of the crew like has a special skill that makes them perfect for this heist, as we tend to have in stories of this type. But it also says that each of them has their own complicated relationship with China and the identity they've cultivated as Chinese Americans. So a couple of different elements going on here. I'm expecting a fast-paced, hopefully an engaging story, but with a little bit of depth as we're diving into each of these characters and their own relationship with their identity, the individual skills they have, and the reasons why they've signed up for this heist in the first place. So when I picked up Portrait of a Thief, I was telling you guys like the reason why I want to read this is because even though I don't think this is going to blow my mind, I think it'll be entertaining. I think it'll be a good time. I think that it will be compelling. And I do not know how a book with a synopsis that sounds this interesting has managed to be as boring as it is. I am 100 pages into this. I think they haven't even started heisting. Their mission is to gather 5 zodiac heads that used to be part of the Summer Palace, like a fountain in the Summer Palace in Beijing. They haven't even begun. They have 5 things to steal from 5 different museums in 5 different countries. And I am 98 pages into this book, and they have not even started. I also mentioned to you guys that I thought that the way that we were going to be discussing the cultural identity of these main characters was going to be interesting and add an extra dimension to this story. But honestly, they almost feel like 2-dimensional versions of each other, just like 5 cookie cutter characters with a slightly different bit of a backstory. So it is different, but they, in terms of their voices, they don't feel any different from each other. They don't feel like real people. They feel like caricatures. And I feel like the issue with this book is that it does deal with serious topics. It has quite a serious tone to it. And yet the way that they're approaching this heist is the most unserious thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. Considering this is just a heist story, I thought we would have put a little bit more care into the heist element, because essentially the leader of this heist is Will. He's a senior at Harvard and he works at a museum where some art is stolen. And during the theft, one of the thieves slips a business card into his pocket. So he rings this number and finds out that it's like this shady Chinese organization. Shady as in like they very obviously have dealings in some like secret projects, and she tells him that she has this impossible job. So he like immediately rings his sister and is like, oh, do you want to come do this? And then he just happens to know 4 other people, well, his sister is one of them, but 3 other people outside of his sister that would be perfect for this job, that are all Chinese American and all have a very unique skill set that makes them perfect for a heist. And they're all the same age within like 2 years of each other. How is that? How is that a thing? So he ends up putting together this crew. There is his sister, who I think is charismatic. I think that's her skill. His sister's roommate is a street racer. A girl that he knew, I think in his freshman year, is a software engineer, aka a hacker. And the other person is him and his sister's childhood friend, whose father works for like the art theft department of the FBI. And he has an axe to grind with his father. So he's kind of like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go for this. And these 5 get on a plane to Beijing, where they're all onboarded into this mission. And of course, they're a bit like, oh, I don't know, like this could go terribly wrong. But every single one of them is like, yes, let's do it. Eventually. And then they start to plan the heist over Zoom, watching movies like Ocean's 11 to figure out how to steal art from 5 different museums around the world. And I just can't really take it too seriously. And you know what? I'm okay with unserious heists. I actually like my heist stories with a little bit of camaraderie, a little bit of hijinks. You know, that's what I expect from a heist story. It's why I like the Broken Blade series by Mike Holland, because we have some serious stuff going on there, but we also have some like joking and camaraderie and a lot of funny moments. This is all very introspective. We're following each of these characters, but mainly their kind of inner monologue, talking about their history, their past, their relationship to their family, their relationship to China. And I could have read this, but once again, it would have just been reading for reading's sake. I already made that mistake with The Wicked Fate, which I know for a fact that I should have DNF'd. And honestly, today I'm feeling slightly grumpy and I don't want to persevere through a book that I'm not really enjoying, because once again, this is screaming 2 or 3 star read for me and I'm not in the mood. We're coming up to Christmas. I want to be reading stuff that I enjoy, or at least interest me and make the reading experience worthwhile. And if this would have been entertaining and compelling along the way, then I would have stuck with it. But unfortunately, I do think this is going to be a DNF for me, and I'm very disappointed because I did at the very least expect this to be compelling enough for me to make it through to the end. And unfortunately, 100 pages into like a 350-ish page book, we're still not even into the action. We haven't got started, but we have so much to do. I don't know why I'm so heated about this as well. I didn't have a ton of expectations going into it. I know a lot of people had given it a mediocre review, but apparently I'm really mad that I didn't enjoy it. So that does bring us to the end of this episode. So to wrap us up, I feel like we've done a real good job this episode. I attempted to read 7 books and we had a real good run until we got to those last 2. But honestly, I think the first 5 books that I read, I had some sort of positive expectation of, or some sort of precedent, like I'd read from the author before, that made me think that I was going to love them. And of the 7, I actually really enjoyed and shelved 3 of them with a new 5-star. This one was a little bit of a disappointment. I also don't think I would have rated this as harshly if it wasn't Leigh Bardugo and I didn't expect to absolutely love it. But then I also think that there's potential that I would have maybe put this down if it wasn't Leigh Bardugo as well. And this one was just a nice good time, you know. Of the other 4 books that I read, 2 of them I finished and I'm going to be unhauling. This one, definitely the worst book that we read for this video. I'm so mad about this sequel. And this one was enjoyable, but I don't think that it's anything that I need to keep. If you like a young adult contemporary though, would recommend this, or K-Ancrum in general. And then the last 2 books we have were sadly DNFs. This one I was kind of unsure about. At this point, it's just a book that I owned that I didn't really have any expectations of at all. And this one I thought would at least be a good time, but unfortunately didn't quite manage to even do that. So as for the final tallies that we have for this episode, I know that I have unhauled a lot throughout this and I've also shelved a lot, but I'm not going to be counting the books that I unhauled during that little unhaul segment as books scrapped in this episode, because technically they were scrapped during my entire own TBR video. And because I'm not posting another unhaul video this year and I don't want to keep them hanging around my house, I've just included that unhaul in here, so they're not technically scraps from this project. And in terms of the books that we shelved, I'm only counting the ones that came from the stacks. There they are, and not the ones that came from the other stacks that aren't the stacks, which are about to become the stacks when I've wrapped up this video. So in conclusion, we actually only have 4 scraps from this one, which I don't think is too bad. I did expect Portrait of a Thief to be a scrap even if I finished it. I am sad that I didn't manage to make it through that one though, especially because I had such a good run of books that I, for the most part, enjoyed in this episode. The Forest Grimm though, I feel like that one was 50-50, could have gone either way. And then in terms of books that we've shelved, because I made so much space on the shelves after unhauling so many books during my own TBR video, we have managed to shelve 11 books in this episode, ridden the stacks completely of all paperbacks. I did receive a couple of books from Penguin Michael Joseph to post about for a giveaway, so I've had 2 more paperbacks added to what's going to be filtering into here, but that's it. They're both romance as well. So at the end of episode 21, we are looking pretty good in the stats right now. It's not going to last. You guys saw how many books I'm going to be piling into here, but we are ending this episode with 23 books in the stacks, which is a 15 book reduction from where I think we started this episode on with 38. Now, like I said, I would love that to be the number that we enter episode 22 with, but we know that that is not going to be the case. I'm going to have a little bit of a rearrange, I think, of what's coming in here. So maybe swap some books out for some of the older books I have, so it's not all brand new releases that are headed in here and we have a bit of a mix going forward. I do hope that you have enjoyed the last year of Shelve It or Scrap It. Don't worry, we are going to be continuing, but I do think that the next episode is going to be the last episode that balances hauls from 2025, because at this point, like, I've fallen behind. I'm not clawing it back and I'm just going to consistently be behind. So the next episode, we are going to be rectifying the books that I hauled in September, which actually was only 4 or 5 books, but don't worry, I'm not going to make it that easy for myself. I am going to put a twist on it to make it as difficult as possible. And then going forward, I don't know if we'll have a remix or whether we'll just start balancing the books from January when we get to episode 23. But thank you so much for your support over this last year of this vlog project. But I do hope you've enjoyed this one if you've made it this far. As usual, it is a lengthy one. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're a go, and nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.